Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham. The sun is up. It's another beautiful morning. What a fantastic day it was yesterday. 24 degrees, 23 degrees in a lot of parts of the country. Absolutely beautiful day to be out and about in the afternoon. Shopping, if that's what you so wish to do, or drinking, or possibly just imbibing in general. Meanwhile, of course, we've got a reset going on. Yet another reset. Keir Starmer is getting it in the neck from all sorts of places this morning. You might remember yesterday on this very show at about 8:30, Keir Starmer got up in Downing Street and decided to give us his version of events. He decided to tell us how he was going to bring down immigration. According to the front page of the Times today, he's going to curb 100,000 arrivals a year. Unfortunately, accompanying that particular story is a picture of 3 asylum seekers who were amongst more than 600 asylum seekers and migrants who arrived on the beaches of Dover yesterday, meaning that the number now that have come since the beginning of January is around about £12,000. There's 2 very young-looking guys who look very happy to be here, and there's a third one who seems to be making some kind of gesture. He's literally beside himself with glee that he's managed to reach this shore because he knows obviously that he's not going to be going anywhere. We've got all sorts of critiques of what he said yesterday. We did a lot of it yesterday. We'll do more of it today because, of course, even his own side are now likening him more to Enoch Powell than to Lucy Powell, saying he actually used a phrase which was used by Enoch Powell. I don't particularly care whether Keir Starmer wants to end immigration. I just don't really believe that he does. I don't believe that by invoking, you know, what The Guardian calls far-right ideology, it's going to make any difference whatsoever. Peter Blexley's here with us this morning. Very good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning,
good to see you. We've got plenty to talk about, including, of course, the other Starmer story, which broke a little bit later yesterday afternoon, was that somebody set fire to his front door. Not, of course, the front door of Downing Street, but the place where he used to live. Counter-terrorism officers are now investigating after suspicious fires at his North London home and at a second property and a vehicle linked to him. And certainly one of the questions I'm going to be asking you, Peter, is how on earth is it possible for ordinary members of the public to get anywhere near the Prime Minister's residence, whether he's living there or not? Surely it shouldn't be possible. We'll get to that in a minute. Also, of course, a terror probe into arson at PM's home, front page of the Daily Telegraph. The Sun go with P. Diddy, a man who seems to have spent very little time actually making any music and an awful lot of time having sex parties. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. And the Daily Mail giving us the better version of what happened yesterday with Keir Starmer. His immigration crackdown is ridiculed because the plan has no cap on numbers, it's loads of recycled policies, and it goes against everything he's ever believed in. Apart from that, it's a brilliant idea. 5 minutes past 6. Don't forget, you can send us your voice notes, 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. A very good morning to you. We are here for the next 4 hours, and of course every single weekday morning Glory for 4 glorious hours from 6 till 10. Peter Blexley, very good morning to you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Resplendent in your summer suit.
Thank you.
Let's start, shall we, with this terror probe into the arson at the Prime Minister's home, because we kind of did it. We'll come back to the immigration story in a minute. But how is it possible that somebody, albeit that he's got 2 homes apparently in North London, I think we've got pictures of him outside of this one, taken by photographer Nigel Howard. Here we are with, you know, what looks like somebody setting fire to the sort of opening area where the front door is. I don't know how bad the fire was, but you can see fire damage certainly, and somebody interfering with his car. We saw this before, didn't we, with Rishi Sunak, when those protesters managed to get to his house in Yorkshire and cover it with slogans. How is this possible?
Well, it's clearly a security breach.
Yeah.
Even if Starmer no longer lives there, it was the family home.
Yeah.
One would suggest that the family might move back there whenever he gets booted out of Downing Street.
Continue to be the family home. I think he still owns it.
Yeah, he does, and he's rented it out.
Yeah.
I actually wonder whether, because he's got a 5-year term as Prime Minister, whether he got a 5-year deal off of Serco, renting the house out.
Very possibly so.
Because they wanted to put migrants in it.
Yeah, well, maybe they have. Maybe he's making a right fortune out of it, but there we are.
Quite possibly. But it clearly seems to be a significant blaze at the front door.
Yeah.
Neighbours have been spoken to. They talk of hearing glass breaking and then a bang.
Right.
And that would be consistent with a petrol bomb, for example, although nothing's been confirmed.
Right.
If something like that was thrown at the front door, it would clearly have breaking glass. I mean, the sound of the petrol igniting very, very rapidly. We'll have to wait and see. But it is a security breach. Very, very disconcerting for whoever lives there.
Yes.
I'm sure that house has got a back door. But many people live in flats, maisonettes and such like, that don't have back doors. Yeah. And when your front door goes up, that can be a very...
Well, I'm sure you know better than me, but I mean, it could go horribly wrong and the whole house could go up, couldn't it?
Oh, indeed. Without a shadow of a doubt.
It looks as though, quite fortunately, the only real damage is to the front door and the sort of porch area, so it seems to have been contained. But, you know, that's not to say that it couldn't have got, you know, much worse.
And a very serious criminal offence, which is arson with intent to endanger life.
Yes.
For that intent to endanger life element to come into play, recklessness counts as...
Well, there's a woman currently in prison for saying that somebody should set fire to a building. As opposed to actually setting fire to a building. So let's hope that whoever did this is going to go to prison for more than 31 months.
And, of course, it's no surprise that the counter-terrorism police are carrying out the investigation. So nobody is better resourced than the British counter-terrorism police in terms of the investigation. So if anyone's going to catch them,
the bizarre thing is, of course, that there are so many people that could have had a go at Keir Starmer because he's that unpopular. And I'm not making light of this by any stretch of the imagination because it's a terrible thing that should have happened. And no matter how terrible you may feel about the Prime Minister, you don't go throwing petrol bombs at his house. But, I mean, you know, he's upset pretty much the trans lobby. He's upset the left. He's upset the right. He's upset kind of, you know, immigrants. He's upset pretty much everybody in Britain.
People with disabilities.
People with disabilities, pensioners. You know, he's upset pretty much the entire nation. I mean, Julie Hartley-Brewer put out a tweet and sort of in jest yesterday saying 47 million suspects who might have committed this crime. She's not that far wrong.
No, he really has managed to upset the entire spectrum of the Labour Party and so many millions of people with everything that he's done in a relatively short space of time. This is quite some...
He hasn't been in a year yet.
No. Although, of course, I think what many, many political commentators fail to appreciate is that Starmer was elected on a protest vote. People always talk about how by-elections are subjected to a protest vote. That general election of last year was a protest vote against the Tories. A general election that was a protest vote. Because Starmer didn't get elected with this vast majority because millions of people bought in ideologically to his manifesto and what he was saying. They just had to get the Tories out.
No, people say the Tories lost the election, Labour didn't win it. I mean, that's basically where we are.
And that's being shown quite clearly in this short space of time with his rampant unpopularity as it stands, and so many people going, this government has got to go.
Because yesterday's appearance by him was even worse than most of his appearances when he had stood up at 8:30 and he made this speech and he didn't mention illegal migrants. He didn't mention the fact that, you know, people coming on small boats, even as he was speaking. 7 different boats in the sun. They've got the actual photographic evidence. I think pages 6 and 7. You know. 7:32 a.m, 8:33 a.m, 9:29 a.m, 12:45 p.m, 1:16 p.m, 1:35 p.m, and 2:51 p.m. And I'm sorry to say this, Peter, but all of those arrivals on boats are on boats which are either... I'm looking at the name of the boat, which is Hurricane, which seems to be the same boat that's bringing them all in, which is clearly not an illegal dinghy. It's a boat which is obviously owned by Border Force, who are bringing these people in now.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, we know they are, but to see it like this in black and white, 7 different boats from 7:32 in the morning to 2:51 in the afternoon, it's ridiculous.
It is absolutely galling. And I'm sorry, viewers and listeners, but there is so much in the papers today that makes me extremely angry. I don't want to lower the mood too much. Because I know people are getting ready to go to work and enjoy the sunrise and all those kind of things. But it is absolutely outrageous. The man you spoke about, who's photographed on that coach, is making the hand gesture of a W. In other words, winner.
Right.
Because he knows he has come to the land of milk and hotels.
Yes.
Where he will be kept, fed, medical treatment and the such like.
Yeah.
And I know it's very difficult to judge a book by its cover, but that young man looks a bit too young to me to be a fully qualified engineer,
Yes.
doctor, architect.
And so do the other two. They look as if they've just come here for a jolly.
And they're illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
They are illegal immigrants. Let's not sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Let's not Starmerise it. Let's not package it up as something other than the fact that they are illegal immigrants who have come to this country and are going to have a fortune lavished upon them at the expense of you, me, and every taxpayer watching or listening to this show.
Listen to this description in The Sun. At least another 500 arrived, and reliably informed it's closer to 600 they now know, on 7 boats. One man died making the dangerous cross-channel journey. Calm seas prompted a surge in those attempting the treacherous 21-mile trip to Dover. They wore life jackets while disembarking from border force vessels before being escorted to an immigration processing centre. Buses were parked there, waiting to drive the arrivals to hotels. It's like a tourist business.
And how many more will come today?
If people will be flying today to, I don't know, Alicante Airport, where there will be buses waiting to take them to their holiday destination, that's what it's like.
Yep.
It's a holiday.
And today.
Yeah.
And tomorrow.
Yep.
And the day after that.
Yep.
And it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And whilst politicians will try and have us separate illegal immigration from legal migration, the fact of the matter is, and Starmer, with his pathetic attempt to try and be a pound shop Nigel Farage yesterday, right, has to realise that these scenes on pages 6 and 7 of The Sun, these scenes that we see on our televisions of these boats and these border force boats coming in with these hundreds upon hundreds of people on there, that is the image which sums up migration as an entirety to everybody. That's it, and nothing's being done about it.
And it's on the
that's
front
why
pages
people
of
are
every paper.
outraged.
Absolutely right. And so for all of his bluster and sort of BS yesterday, nothing really has changed. You know, we wake up this morning, he says that there are going to be 100,000 less people coming to this country as a result of his measures. Nobody believes that. Nobody thinks that's going to happen, because in the end, all he said is, we want people to speak better English, and we're going to stop care workers coming here in order to work for very, very low wages in the care system. That's it. That's all he's really said. He hasn't said he's going to stop the boats. He continues to say that he's going to smash the gangs, which he's not doing. And quite frankly, it was all just a litany of rhetoric. There was nothing really substantial in it.
But moreover, he's saying this will go into a white paper, a parliamentary white paper, which would take at least 18 months to become law.
Right.
So nothing's going to happen between now and then.
You say nothing's going to happen. What's going to happen is they're going to get a lot more illegal immigrants coming in and a lot more legal ones as well.
Exactly. By the hundreds of thousands coming into this country, hoovering up resources, costing billions, and what benefit to the nation? The whole myth about migration being beneficial to the economy has recently been completely debunked.
Completely.
Because it's provided zero growth.
Even
no
by
growth
Starmer.
at all.
Even by Starmer, whose video we played yesterday from 2020, where he said we've got to talk about the benefits of migration, because he's gone completely a flip-flop now. He's completely changed his view. If you're looking now at a tweet, I don't know if you can see it, where he says, if you want to live in the UK, you should speak English. That's common sense. Now, a couple of years ago, the Labour government or the Labour Party would have said, if you'd put that out there as a Conservative MP or a Reform MP, you'd be guilty of some kind of hate crime.
Or a member of the public.
Yeah.
And
they have the Rozzers round.
Yeah, exactly, and we all know what they're like these days, don't we?
Absolutely right. Let's have a look at what Starmer said yesterday. This is the controversial clip about the island of strangers.
These rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower-paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
He believes it now. He didn't believe it before.
Oh, no.
But he started believing it yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, John McDonnell was amongst those on the left who have become very wound up about what he just said there. He called the speech shockingly divisive. He said that a reference to an island of strangers reflects the language of Enoch Powell, who in his 1968 speech said that the British population had found themselves made strangers in their own country because of mass immigration.
When I heard that yesterday at speech of Starmer,
Yeah.
As part of my travels going to various work things, I went into what was known as the Rivers of Blood speech of Enoch Powell, and I posted on social media, on my X account, the comparison, those two comparisons, which appear in all the papers. So I'm claiming it for being the first person to highlight it to the nation yesterday.
Fair enough.
Okay, I may or may not, but anyway, and I did.
Yeah.
And I deliberately did it because it is such a comparison that needs to be drawn. The language that he said yesterday must have had the lunatic left lentil munching Guardian readers, lunatics, going garrity.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, these are the kinds of words which in the past, when, for example, Priti Patel was Home Secretary, when Suella Braverman was Home Secretary, these were people who were vilified for a kind of policy. They weren't even using that language, but for the policies that they were thinking of introducing, they were described as, 1930s, Nazi Germany types. Yeah. And by Labour, by the way.
Yes, of course.
And by people like Keir Starmer.
Yeah. Starmer will do anything. He is utterly shameless.
He is.
If I were a youngster and I had technological expertise, in other words, I could use AI and such like, what I would do is take the words of Starmer, voice them up as if they were Nigel Farage, and sync them to images of Nigel Farage, and put them there with Nigel saying those very words. Yes. Put them out there, and I bet you would have lunatic lefties slagging Farage off.
Of course.
An image of Nigel Farage,
of course,
spouting Starmer's words.
But of course, the difference between Nigel Farage and Keir Starmer is that Nigel Farage actually believes it, and Keir Starmer doesn't. Keir Starmer's, performing here. He's pretending that he cares. He's pretending that he wants to cut immigration when he really doesn't.
And Nigel Farage is consistent.
Yes.
On migration.
He's been saying it forever.
Yes,
right.
Indeed.
This bozo has only just suddenly discovered that immigration might not be a great idea. Let's have a look at what Kemi Badenoch tweeted out. This is a montage of what Starmer has said on immigration, and we always do this because there's always so much rich pickings that you can find of Starmer's hypocrisy. Have a look.
We need to make the wider case on immigration. We welcome migrants.
Should immigration be reduced?
Well, I don't believe in numbers and I don't believe in salary gaps.
We've always welcomed people to work in this country. We could get a more positive route which didn't take us into the place of numbers or quotas or you're only worth having it, you can earn a certain amount of money.
What about foreign nationals living in the UK? Should they get a vote?
I would like us to look at that.
The Labour Party's been a bit scared of making the positive case for immigration for quite a number of years. I think we need to turn that round. The whole of the United Kingdom is better because of immigration.
So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
How can you be so hypocritical? How can you be so barefaced as a liar and say so many different things about the same subject and expect people to take you seriously? How can you?
There is only one expression, I feel, that I can say as a result of listening to that. Keir Starmer is unfit for the office that he holds.
Yes.
Completely.
He's a compulsive liar, I think. Yeah. I don't think he even knows he's doing it.
He is not worthy of being called Prime Minister of the UK. He is fundamentally not fit to hold that position. He should be removed.
He should. I couldn't agree with you more. And as if that didn't annoy you enough, have a look at page 8 of the Daily Mail on the old Starmer immigration crackdown. These are the foreign criminals left on our streets after the Prime Minister helped block them from being deported on flights which they were due to get on, which would have sent them home. Double rapist Fabian Henry, jailed for 12 years for raping a girl of 17 twice and for abducting and having sex with a girl of 15, still living in the UK in 2023, thanks to Keir Starmer. Pub scuffle killer Fitzroy Daly stabbed a man aged 50 to death after a pub scuffle in 2012, jailed for 10 years. He was finally sent back to Jamaica in December 2020, but not after he was saved from being sent back the first time by Keir Starmer. Tay-J Thompson, convicted at 17 of possessing crack and heroin with intent to supply, evaded deportation in 2020, beat up a young mother and was convicted of aviation and attempted robbery in 2023. All of these people, and there's 4 more of them, named and shamed, Keir Starmer kept them all in the country.
The kind of people that when I was a detective, after we'd locked them up at the Old Bailey, we would go to the pub and say, what a result that was. Let's go and have a celebratory drink. And then you would have quite naturally have expected them to be deported at the end of their sentence. It is beyond outrageous that they were allowed to remain in this country. A government's primary role is to protect its citizens, howsoever that may be. It's what the structures of the nation are established and maintained for. The police, the courts, the prosecution authority, all of these things are set up. The army is set up to protect a nation's citizens. It is the fundamental core purpose of those in charge of government. And these scumbags, they are vile, repugnant, disgusting scumbags, should not ever be anywhere near the UK. It is a travesty, it is outrageous, and it is a failing of the systems, and these people put us all at risk.
Nico Elliott, jailed for life in 2023 with his father Ernesto, because for knife murder of a man they stole drugs and cash from. Barrington Lang, after a career criminal escaped deportation flight, he was jailed again for 6 months for carrying a knife. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's a shocking sort of roll call of thuggery, murderers, scumbaggery, as you say, and people who, as I say, the left, under the guise of human rights lawyers like Keir Starmer, and in some of those cases he was involved, have been allowed to stay in this country. Unbelievable.
Talking of Keir Starmer and involvement. Now, we all know about this government's reluctance to order a statutory national inquiry into the rape gangs scandal, right? Going back as far as it needs to go back. And I think the best person to ask about all of that would be the wonderful heroine that is Maggie Oliver.
Maggie Oliver, yes.
Right? Let's remember, much of that scandal and the crimes went on whilst Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecution.
Indeed.
I wonder if this government's reluctance to order such an inquiry may be because the trail of inaction and therefore justice being denied may lead to what was his death.
Yes, very, very possibly. And where everything was quashed because it wasn't conveniently politically correct, perhaps.
Imagine the councillors, the council leaders, the police officers, all of those people that wanted to look the other way, that ensured that there weren't the investigations that there should have been, and thereby, the really outrageous bit, failed so many children who were victims of crime. I want to see them in the dock. I want to see them held accountable. And just to repeat, I wonder if the evidence trail of those who looked the other way, of those who did nothing, may lead to the desk that he once sat at.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. It's James from Blackburn. It's another beautiful day, another sunny day. Just get your dinghies out. We'll get across the channel. No problem today. That man yesterday, he's got absolutely no integrity whatsoever. I mean, it's absolutely shocking, really. We shouldn't laugh, but I mean, what is his problem? What's wrong with him? I mean, he comes on, he was doing his very righteous, wasn't he, yesterday? I'm doing this, not for politics, but because it's right. no more. When he goes, no more. And then he's like, yeah, no more. Yeah. You're not doing it for politics. No, you're not doing it because you got absolutely walloped at the locals last week. We all know that you've got no integrity and that you'll say anything. Starmer chameleon and his absolute best again. It's absolutely shocking. What is wrong with him? What's wrong with him? Oh, it's no good. But he does entertain us all, Mike. Keep up the good work.
James, thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, terribly correct. He is Starmer chameleon. He completely doesn't appear to have any kind of self-righteous bone in his body. He doesn't understand that he can't just continue to contradict himself from one year to the next, that he can't suddenly say, I believe in this, when he clearly doesn't believe in anything. It's an absolute shocker. Peter Blexley's here. I'll try and keep him calm. It's not easy because I'm feeling the same way. 28 minutes past 6.
We know that over the past 3 years he's been on countless foreign jet-setting luxury trips around the world at our expense. He says it's to, foster relations with foreign countries and to tell them how wrong Russia was to invade Ukraine. I'm not sure what that has got to do with the Speaker, but there you are. He spent about £300,000 over the last 3 years going on these luxury trips.
I put it in writing, and they basically replied and said we can't remove him out.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:31. I'm Mike Graham. We've got this amazing note from Sarah, who says, morning, Mike and Peter. Sarah in Birmingham here. I hope that you're well. You mentioned that several boats landed yesterday. Can I please ask what would happen if 7 planes randomly landed in the UK during that same time? No flight plan, no authorisation, undocumented passengers. I can tell you what would happen. They wouldn't get the chance to land. The Air Force would be scrambled, and quite rightly, the planes would be escorted out of our airspace as they would be considered a threat. So why, oh why, are the rules different at sea? Why isn't our Royal Navy patrolling our sea border and turning the boats away? They contain exactly the same threat and undocumented passengers. I just don't understand. Have a good day. It's a very good point, isn't it?
Oh, I love your audience.
They're great.
James cheered me up. Yeah. Sarah raises a really good point. And Sarah, if they didn't obey instructions given to them by the RAF, said aeroplanes, they'd be shot out the sky.
Yeah, they would.
Now,
Absolutely
I'm not
right.
suggesting for a moment that these dinghies should be shot out of the channel, but you know,
they should be forcibly turned around.
Exactly.
Shouldn't they?
And we have the Special Boat Service, the SPS, who are the elite.
Yes.
The absolute creme de la creme when it comes to any waterborne kind of operation. So much of what they do in absolute secrecy.
Yes.
those people could ensure the safety of those people on those boats.
Yeah, of course they could.
Without
yeah.
any concern whatsoever.
Yeah.
They wouldn't all be drowning and such like, which some flaky people...
I mean, people have had a go at me in the past for some of the ideas that I came up with. To wit, one of them was, you know, just make sure that when the dinghy gets in the water on the other side of the channel, you know, you either put some kind of gash in it with a knife or you fire a dart at it in some way, shape or form. The government, believe it or not, are actually taking that a step further and talking about firing nets over the boats so that the outboard motors actually seize up and don't work from jet skis, right? I mean, that's how crazy they're getting. So no matter how crazy you think your ideas might be, you know, the government are actually considering even crazier ones.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what to do.
Meanwhile, nothing happens.
Apart
from hundreds and hundreds of people rocking up on our shores. Gleefully making W signs for winning out of the window of coaches which we are paying for, that are ferrying them to hotels that we are paying for.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that story yesterday in The Sun of the rapper who's a friend of 50 Cent's apparently, although 50 Cent denies it, but he's been in some of his videos. He's a Trinidadian national. He goes to live in America, gets caught up in a gunfight, right, does 3.5 years in a prison in New York State, somehow gets released, goes back to Trinidad, somehow pitches up on the shores of Britain, right? He's now living in a Novotel in Stevenage, right, at our expense. He has no right to be here. He has no connection to Britain. He's a Trinidadian citizen who spent time in America and done time there for gun crime. What on earth is going on?
Mike, if you and I have to travel around the country, you know, for work, for a speaking gig or some kind of other kind of engagement, and we need a Novotel or a Holiday Inn or a Premier Inn or any other kind of hotel to get our heads down for the night, we, funnily enough, pay for it.
Yeah.
Just like all your audience who go away for a weekend.
Yeah.
We go to hotels, we pay for them out of our hard-earned money.
Exactly.
And this lot come in and get everything for nothing, and they've come here illegally.
Yeah.
It is beyond outrageous. My patience has just been, well, it's gone.
I know, I can see. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Morning, Mike. Morning, Peter. Andy in Portsmouth. I heard Starmer's speech yesterday. Not convinced whatsoever. I don't believe a word that comes out of that man's mouth. I never have and I never will. At the end of the day, they're running scared because reform are on the up big time and they're scared out of their minds. So Starmer loves immigration and he always has done. And to say he doesn't, I'm not convinced whatsoever. I'm not buying it.
It's a lie. It's as simple as that. It is blatant hypocrisy, just as the caption says. Let's have a look at what Nigel Farage had to say about Starmer's speech.
Keir Starmer is the biggest hypocrite on earth. He spent his whole career campaigning for mass migration and for open borders. Look at this.
So we have to make the case for the benefits of migration, the benefits of free movement.
Well, that was 2020. That for the man, of course, who did all he could to stop Brexit. Now today, because Reform are smashing into the opinion polls and in the local elections, he stands up and says, you can trust me, you can believe me, we are going to reduce net migration. This guy is a hypocrite, he's totally insincere. No wonder his support is falling off a cliff. He deserves it.
Yep. You can't disagree with any of that. And they used the same clip that we used, of course, yesterday morning. Here's one that will get you going as well. How about this one? It's page 2 of The Sun. More than 400 ISIS jihadis have returned to the UK but not faced justice.
Yeah.
According to a damning report which says these fighters carried out killings, terror attacks and genocide after joining the banned terror group in Iraq and Syria. Lord Alton, head of the Joint Committee on Human Rights, says ministers cannot wash their hands of these crimes just because they happened overseas. So, once again, we don't actually know how many of these characters have returned from Syria, from these refugee camps. We speak to a guy called Alan Duncan, who goes out there quite a lot, right? He's a fantastic documentary maker and who has interviewed Shamima Begum in the past, and who tells me that these camps are still absolutely riddled with people from this country, many of whom will return, some of whom have already returned. You know, they're walking the streets of Britain, they're terrorists.
And the last couple of lines of this article on page 2 read, the government said its priority remains achieving accountability for victims. Right, now let's just pick apart that very short line.
Yeah.
achieving accountability for victims. These jihadis allegedly committed their crimes in Syria and the such like, where they may have beheaded people and so on.
Set fire to them in
right?
cages.
Yeah. So how's this government going to get accountability for victims for crimes that happened in Syria?
Find that difficult to believe, that one.
Yes.
Right.
What are they going to do? Go to Syria, interview the victims' family members, get witness statements from them and bring them back and put them in front of a judge at the Old Bailey? What utter codswallop. What utter nonsense. It's just tripe that they spew out, thinking that we are going to be stupid enough to fall for it.
And meanwhile, these dangerous individuals are walking around in this country, possibly with malice aforethought. For all we know, it might have been one of them that chucked a petrol bomb at the Prime Minister's front door.
Yep.
You know, it's possible.
And you can guarantee, absolutely guarantee, I say this without fear of contradiction whatsoever, that some of those will be, if they haven't already, be arrested for further very serious crimes committed here in the UK. That will create victims. That's the victims I'm concerned about.
Exactly. Unbelievable stuff. We'll come back to that because we're running a bit late, so we'll take another quick break and then we'll talk about how the NHS is going to put weight classes into people's homes. They're going to give them scales so that they can weigh their obese children. But the children won't be able to find out how much they weigh because apparently that will be wrong. So they will have a scale without a readout on it. I don't know how it works. We'll come back with more from that. Plus, Donald Trump's getting a free plane from the Qataris. Brilliant. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, and this, of course, is the home of common sense. Peter Blexley is here, speaking plenty of it. Thank goodness for you being here, because this is a perfect day for you to be here. Easy fix for the dinghies crossing. 10 years custody to all pilots of the boats. Just the pilots. Very shortly, no one will want to pilot the dinghies across, says Paratus. Yeah, I mean, I don't always understand why they don't just lift the people who seem to be in charge of the outboard motor, because surely they're the ones who should be linked to the traffickers, right?
Yes, except in this pathetic country's criminal justice system, the 10 years you give them will actually be 5.
Yes.
And they'll happily serve that, knowing that they will come out to the vast riches that they've earned through smuggling all these people into the UK.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you say to people, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime, well, these people would happily do that time, because they know when they come out, the money will still be there.
The money will still be rolling in, Emin Bath says, this morning, legends, I look forward to seeing the polls after Slippery Starmer's latest speech. I can only imagine he's pushed the Labour lefties towards the Greens and any sane voter away further from a party that is completely detached from reality. Boris was right about Captain Flip-Flop, but the sense of integrity he attempts to present is quite unbelievable. It really is. I mean, if you were a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you would study Starmer as an example of somebody who is either so deluded or such a psychopath that he thinks he just continued to tell lie after lie after lie, and everybody's going to believe him.
And you would imagine that during his career as a prosecutor, climbing the ranks to be the DPP, he will have sat in a court and seen people take an oath where they promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You'd think he'd have a real firm grip on the damage that lies can do.
You would think so, but you know, I've got an interesting take on that because I spoke to Victoria Atkins, who's a Conservative former minister, now shadow minister, who was a King's Counsel, or was then a Queen's Counsel, working for the CPS, right? And she told me, live on this show, actually, Keir Starmer used to sit behind a desk. He used to instruct people like me to do the pleading in the court. So I've got a feeling he's never actually been in court pleading as a barrister, that he's basically an over-superannuated civil servant. And that would explain a lot, because, as I've said many times to you, Peter, and others, if he was a barrister, surely his public speaking skills would be better, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but even if that were the case, he would still have an appreciation of truth and lies.
Absolutely, because he would have studied evidence.
Exactly, and on truth and lies,
witness statements.
Court cases are decided so often. And of course, as I've always said to my children, you know, it's not the truth that's ever got me into trouble over the years. It's been the lies.
Yes.
So don't be afraid of the truth.
Yeah.
It's a friend.
Yes.
It's the lies that are the enemy.
Exactly right.
And these enemies of Starmer, the perpetual lies that he keeps churning out, are going to be the undoing of him.
I totally agree with that, and I think the end is nigh for him in that sense. Let's talk about something slightly lighter. Nearly a quarter of parents with adult children have seen them move back home after initially leaving. According to research, 23% of adult kids have returned, some with a partner in tow, which makes life a little bit complicated if you're still trying to run a household, doesn't it?
Mike Graham?
Yes.
As if I'm not having a bad morning, right? You've just raised my blood pressure by a few notches, OK?
Right.
Let me tell you the story inside the Blexley household.
Yes.
3 weeks ago, our 22-year-old came home.
Right.
He'd been travelling the world for months.
Oh, nice.
You know that very middle-class thing?
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? When they swan off to discover themselves and all that cobblers.
Right, in Thailand or somewhere.
Oh, yeah, loads of places.
Yeah, South
including
America.
Philippines, India, all kind of places, right?
Yeah.
And, of course, that was after he graduated, right?
Yeah.
Well done, son. In defence of our 22-year-old, he is now working a lot as a cricket coach during the summer in schools, clubs, this, that and the other.
Right.
He's grafting, but he's home.
Right.
Cluttering up the house.
Yes.
And he eats like a blooming Trojan.
Yeah. They literally clean out the fridge, don't they?
Fast forward to Saturday, just gone.
Right.
And home comes the 23-year-old with his girlfriend.
Right.
And guess what they've been
Where's
doing?
he been?
Oh, travelling the world.
Well, also travelling the world.
Oh, yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I've been working class bloke all my life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've worked very hard to have the trappings that some middle class people have these days.
Yeah.
And there's my
Some
kids.
garden furniture, a couple of things, a barbecue maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Half decent car on the
Decent
driveway.
television.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a QPR season ticket.
Yeah, there we go.
So
can't have everything.
No, exactly. So he's done again university.
Yeah.
He worked for a year because his girlfriend was a year behind him at uni.
Right.
Soon as she graduated, off they've
they went.
swanned for 8 months, and they've just come home.
Right.
So now it went from our lovely house with me and my darling wife, enjoying it, just being the pair of us.
Yeah.
Now there's 5 of us. Yes, they come home.
Crikey.
Yes, they eat a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, it costs a fortune. If they'd only get blooming jobs, find themselves somewhere to live and bugger off, then I'd be a bit happier.
And do they make any contribution at all to the household
Well, they haven't
income?
yet, because the 23-year-old and his girlfriend only got home on Saturday, so
see.
they haven't managed to get jobs just yet.
Right.
And the 22-year-old, I suspect that'll be a matter for his mother if she asks him when he's going to have to contribute rent, which, as far as I'm concerned, he should be doing so.
I think it's fair enough if you're going to be a grown-up in your 20s, living at home with your parents. And I can understand it's difficult for people to get homes and houses and all that because it's expensive. Even the rental market is expensive. You know why? Because we keep giving landlords the right to get migrants coming in for 5 years, guaranteed rent and guaranteed income, much higher than what your kids would pay, right?
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I think they should have to pay something, even if it's a small stipend, just to make them understand that there is such a thing as rent.
Yeah.
And that you have to pay. You can't just live for free forever.
The 22-year-old is in the gym every day.
Of course.
Right? OK? He eats 5 eggs for breakfast.
Crikey.
Do you know how expensive eggs are these days?
I do. You'd have to buy a dozen eggs like every couple of days then.
Yeah. We bought 4 dozen eggs when we went to Tesco the other day. Other supermarkets are available. 4 dozen eggs.
Amazing. Here's another one that's going to get you going. I'm sorry about this. I'm not doing it deliberately. A driver has tracked his car, which was stolen from outside his house, right? A bloke by the name of Jimmy Monday. Doesn't say what day his car was stolen, funnily enough, but it's a Range Rover, and he had an air tag in it, which is a sort of, tracking device of one kind or another. He's apparently been watching it as it's been moving around the world. It headed out across the globe, and he's now discovered that it's in Tanzania, where we can actually watch it being driven backwards and forwards from some bloke's house to an office, right, in Africa.
Doing the same route every day.
And nobody can do anything about it.
No. Well, for many years, I've been coming on here and saying...
It's in Tanzania.
Yeah, but I've been saying when people come down in the morning and find that their car is not on the driveway anymore, that, in all likelihood, it will be out of the country before they've discovered it missing.
Yes, but I remember
an example of that.
I remember, and you'll remember this probably even better than me, but back in the sort of 90s, the place that cars used to end up was southern Spain, or in the Costa del Crime, or in sort of Eastern Europe. Or sometimes the big high-end one's Russia. But I've never heard of it being. They're now saying Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Sudan are the places where all these cars end up.
Yeah, well, they're prestigious cars.
Yeah,
they're prestigious cars in the UK.
Yeah, right.
Imagine the kind of kudos that goes in having one of those in the aforementioned countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phones, China.
To be honest, I'm surprised anybody left in any of these countries. Mostly they're in Dover, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. No one left to drive them.
Yeah.
And this is just yet another example. And I really like this fella because he said another thing that really irritates him is that his favourite hat was in the car.
Yes.
Size 9. And he'd like that back.
Yes.
If you want to get ahead, get a hat. So he has my absolute sympathy. But again, you see, when it comes to car crime in this country, which is at utterly unacceptable levels, and you've got virtually no chance of getting a police investigation into it, not only have you got to have air tags in it, which is frustrating in this case for the victim, but you need a steering lock.
Yeah.
If you've got a driveway, you've got to put in one of those retractable poles that you can raise and lower every time you take the car out.
I've seen people put in those locks actually on the wheel now as well, like on your tyre, where you get it's like a mini clamp.
Like a clamp.
To stop it from being driven away.
Yep. And an immobiliser beyond the immobiliser that the manufacturer has fitted.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a car and you paid an awful lot of money for it, you want to keep it. So I'm afraid in lawless Britain 2025, you've got to protect your stuff.
Where I live, right, and it's in sort of southeast London, and there's this little private road, and there's some underground car parking that you can access from the private road, and they've actually put a lock on the gate now because people were apparently using it not to steal the cars from, but to park the cars in underground spaces, to leave them there for a couple of weeks to see if anybody found them, and if nobody came to find them because of the tracking device, they figured that's good, we'll just keep it now, and then they drive the cars away.
Yeah.
So it was a very well organised, crime gang, clearly.
Unfortunately, many criminals are very cunning, very smart, very clever. It's why we used to celebrate so much when we caught the really cunning, smart ones and locked them up for a long time. Why we went and partied very hard, because it takes a lot of nous and detective ability, and you've got to be a bit smart.
You can't make any mistakes,
can
you? Because they'll get around them if there is anything like that. Let's get a voice note from Ian.
What a great show. It's good to hear two voices of common sense on this great day. There's only one word I could use to describe Mr. Starmer, and that is duplicitous. I cannot even get my head around what he must walk around at home talking to himself, changing his mind. I've never known anyone or anything like it. He hasn't got a genuine bone in his body.
It is extraordinary. Ian's quite right. We've got to stop again because we're up against the clock, but we've got one more little bit to do. Peter Blexley's here talking absolute sense, and Ian is appreciative of it, as indeed everybody else, because it is incredible. There's something wrong with the guy. Nobody can be that duplicitous, surely, to God, without realising. What does he think when he goes home and puts his head on the pillow? Unbelievable stuff. This is Morning Glory, the home of common sense.
think the whole conversation has changed. You know, some of us have got scars on our backs from fighting for this stuff for years and years in which it was not just unfashionable, but completely taboo to be aggressively questioning and challenging the scale of uncontrolled immigration. You know, those of us that have been at the forefront of this political debate have been called every name under the sun, and that's fine. We're used to it. You stick your neck out, you've got to be ready.
For years we've been told that just to mention immigration makes you a racist.
Yeah.
Now the nation has pronounced big time. And if there had been elections in areas which were banned from having elections a couple of weeks ago, then the result would have been even more striking. And I think that has caused the major parties to wake up. They will now all have a great argument.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 5 minutes to 7. The hour has gone. A lot of people have been very complimentary to Mr. Peter Blexley. They love you this morning, talking absolute common sense. They're saying things like, another day of pulling the hair out. Always look forward to when Peter is on, says Chris. He's always spot on. When I think of the police, I think of people like Peter. Then I remember they are not like that anymore. What the hell happened?
Oh,
it's true.
You.
It's a long story. Well, we covered that business in Kent the other day. Should we talk about Ed Miliband's wife?
Yes.
Who is very much a not in my backyard type person.
Let's. Yeah. Her name's Justine Thornton.
Oh, yeah.
And she's a High Court judge.
Of course she is, darling.
Yeah. Guess what she specialises in?
I don't know. Nimbyism?
Environmental law.
Oh, of course.
Hey!
Brilliant.
Match made in heaven,
Yeah,
eh?
fantastic. So there he is with his ukulele by the wind farm, and there she is defending people or making judgments, perhaps, on people.
Yes. Indeed.
But she's not happy with Angela Rayner, is she?
No, she's really not. She's got a bee in her bonnet about a planning application, which is for a proposed 5-storey block of flats.
Yeah.
5-storey. So we're not talking skyscraper here.
No, modest.
Exactly. And it's in Dartmouth Park, which is a wealthy suburb in Sir Keir Starmer's London constituency.
So the Camden, right. I know it. I know that area.
They like to live in, batched together, don't they?
They do, yeah. Very nice.
They really do.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Ed Miliband's wife, Ms Thornton, is objecting to this planning application, because she is a typical NIMBY.
Yeah.
You know, I can imagine her sitting there having her lentil soup one night.
Well, she's got the 2 kitchens, of course, they've got.
Of course, on her island.
And the nanny.
Going, why don't they go and build these flats where the poor people
like
live?
Lewisham or somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Can't have it round here.
No.
So she's written a letter of objection. Guess what? Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh.
He's written a letter of objection as well.
They're all there, the stars, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Benedict doesn't want them either.
He's deeply aggrieved about it, and they say that there's no objection to the principle of development, particularly in the context of the need for more housing.
Yes, of course, for the poor.
But just don't do it where we can see it.
No, we want to see the park, obviously.
Yeah.
To walk our little chihuahuas. Brilliant, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant.
And there are, of course, concerns over privacy.
Oh, yes.
We must retain our privacy.
Yeah, of course.
We can't have anybody with their binoculars on the 5th floor.
Oh, no.
Looking into us.
What must it be like to be that up yourself?
Really?
You know?
I mean, give your head a wobble.
Yeah, seriously.
You know, we need more places for people to live in.
Yeah. Yeah, Dartmouth Park, very nice part of the world. Maybe some migrants would go up there and pitch some tents and see how they like that. You know how they used to do that from Texas? They used to send the migrants up to, like Cape Cod. When Barack Obama's got a house. And you go, have some migrants. See how you like it. Dartmouth Park seems like a good place for that. Final one, because we're nearly out of time. A kind word from a loved one may soothe the emotional bruises of a taxing day, but it seems many of us would choose another source of comfort, basically a dog or a cat or a pet of some kind is better when you feel stressed than a partner. according to the Times.
I get it. I love dogs. Never owned one, but I've loved them all my life. When I was a kid, I used to go to Crufts before it moved to Birmingham when it was in London.
Yeah, Olympia.
And it was one of my favourite weekends of the year because I just love dogs. And do you know what? I really love that Britishness of dog ownership.
Yes.
I think it's a real part of our culture.
It really is.
That we need to retain, protect, cherish, and I get it. And I understand if people love their cats as well. Yeah, have a pet.
It is definitely for dogs. They're definitely a dog thing. But I've got to stop you because we've got a special message for you from Rachel, who sent this in and wanted me to play it for you before you go. Have a listen.
Morning, Mike. It's Rach again. Great show as always. This message is for Peter. Peter, I absolutely adore you. I think you're the most amazing man. I'm telling you, you've got me hype as Harry today, that's for sure. Keep on going, mate, I'm telling you, because you talk more sense than everybody out there, darling. Have the absolute best day, I'm telling you. And you go, boy, you go.
Bless you, Rachel.
That's nice,
Thank
isn't
you.
it? Nice way to finish the hour.
That's absolutely
Will you be spending
lovely.
the rest of the day tracking down a few criminals and generally doing right?
I'll be spending the rest of the day trying to lower my blood pressure.
Yes, I know. Sorry about that. Peter Blexley, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back after the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham, and it is going to be another glorious day today. I have to say, the sun was up very, very bright and early this morning over the top of the 17th floor of the tower of News HQ, News UK HQ, of course, which is where we bring Morning Glory to you from every single weekday morning for glorious hours. We've already done one amazing hour with Peter Blexley. What a guy. I mean, he's absolutely incredible. People love listening to him. People love what he's got to say. He talks a lot of sense, and he harkens back, of course, as a police officer reminder to a golden age of policing when they used to actually arrest criminals and stop crime, as opposed to what they do now, which is not arrest criminals and not stopping crime, and instead knocking on doors of 71-year-old former retired police officers who may or may not have put out a tweet that they didn't like very much. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Let's get a voice note, because it's all about immigration again this morning. It's all about Keir Starmer. This is what you've been saying.
Another sunny day. Just get your dinghies out. We'll get across the channel. No problem today. That man yesterday, he's got absolutely no integrity whatsoever.
Keir Starmer won't do anything about immigration.
He did not mention illegal migration. What is happening about the boats?
They are trying to double flip the narrative around immigration.
Another blunder from Keir Starmer. He'll go,
It is unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, Keir Starmer's on the front page this morning for not just coming out with some of the most right-wing rhetoric that anybody's ever heard from a Prime Minister in this country. As somebody said the other day, Tony Blair was probably the most right-wing Prime Minister we've had in this century in the UK. I think he's just been spanked, has he not, by Keir Starmer. He seems to be eliciting the words of Enoch Powell, for heaven's sake. That's what John McDonnell says, anyway, that he's now gone so far to the right. Nobody believes a word of it, of course, because he doesn't believe a word of it. Absolutely incredible. And as if that wasn't enough, you've also got the spectacle of somebody trying to firebomb his house. Nobody knows who did it, nobody knows what happened, but it looks very much like a petrol bomb was chucked in his house in North London, a place where he was seen not long ago, before he moved into Downing Street, of course. He was living there. It's in Camden, it's in North London. The Daily Telegraph, bizarrely, published the actual address. We're not going to do that. But there were certainly people outside demonstrating, people from pro-Palestine groups and people from Just Stop Oil were out there once or twice before. People always said it's not right. People who are politicians should be safe in their own homes. If you've got children, which he has, you should not be subjected to people throwing things at the front door, daubing, graffiti on it. I think in one case, the pro-Palestinian types put down what they pretended were like dead babies outside the front door. I mean, shocking, things to do. And this is where it leads. And thank goodness nobody was hurt. Thank goodness the house didn't actually go up in flames, but it could well have done. We'll be talking about that, plus the whole immigration scenario, plus all the foreign criminals who are still here because Keir Starmer kept them here, plus the 400 jihadis who won't face trial in the UK. The list goes on and on and on. This is Morning Glory. Let's do it. Helen and Ken say this. Helen in Norfolk, actually. Love Peter, great show. Waking up and remembering Starmer's vacuous speech as the illegal boats rolled in. If we were angry before, we're now much more angry. Starmer is an empty vessel, unlike those illegal boats. And Kev from Shropshire says, Mike, the only way to stop the boats is with an incentive. Incentivise the French to deal with it. It can't be any good for them. I'm sure they don't want all these people crossing their country, but I think France needs guidance. We need to remove one fishing licence for every illegal boat that lands on our side, a tariff, so to speak. The boats will stop very quickly and Macron will be enraged. The trouble is we have given them an incentive. We've given them hundreds of millions of pounds, which are supposedly going to be used for them to stop the migrants from leaving their shores and coming here. But of course they don't do that because they don't want them to stop leaving France. They want them to leave France. They don't want them in France either. The incentive should be for France not to let them in at any of their other borders before they get to Calais. So they should block them in Spain, they should block them in Germany, they should block them in Switzerland, they should block them in Belgium, they should block them in every single border that they've got with any other European country. That's what they should do. Let's talk to James Hill, Deputy Political Editor at The Spectator. We've got a bit of breaking news, by the way, James, just before we start. Very good morning to you. UK average regular earnings growth decreased to 5.6% in the 3 months to March. Not sure what that's comparative to, but it sounds like earnings growth is down. Which would suggest that, once again, our economy is not exactly going anywhere at all, anytime soon. So, here we are, once again, talking about Keir Starmer, a man who seems to change his mind literally with the weather, doesn't he?
Well, I think that the current situation in the Channel does reduce ministers to sort of almost being weathermen and weather girls, because we are so impotent to watch as this never-ending armada. I mean, I know last year it was dubbed the Starmada.
Yeah,
was across.
That's good. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, well, that was one of the phrases doing the rounds in Whitehall. But I think
I love it.
Yeah, I think we're going to see probably a record year in small boat crossings later this year, and obviously you've got a very high expectation of unfeasibly good weather over the next few months, so I suspect we'll probably see something like sort of 50,000 boat crossings this year.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that, because they're getting better at it, apart from anything else. I mean, you know, people reminded me just the other week of how it was a time. There was a time when people used to come on lorries, and they used to sort of cling to the undercarriages of the Eurostar and stuff like that. But they've now got what can obviously be described as a very slick operation. These people know what they're doing. They know exactly how many people they can funnel into one boat. The boats are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger and less likely to capsize. You know, I know somebody died yesterday, but you know, considering the numbers that come, the actual, you know, fatalities are quite small, because it looks like something as high as maybe almost 700 came yesterday, while Starmer was standing in Downing Street making his recommendations for how he was going to stop immigration.
Yeah, as you say, these aren't even so small boats anymore of, say, 20. They're closer to 200 sometimes, some of them, and they're crossing huge vessels. And as you say, I think that's the sort of most damaging thing of all, which is that when the Prime Minister raises the salience of migration, I think it's a really important issue. What obviously happens is the jarring juxtaposition, where elsewhere he's obviously fairly powerless to stop what's happening and small boats arriving.
Well, so people said yesterday, didn't they, that they were surprised that in his speech he made no reference really to the small boats at all. He was merely talking about reducing numbers of people coming with visas, which is really not the biggest problem we've got.
Well, I think that, in fairness to Starmer, I think what he wants to do is separate the two issues, and I can understand that in the sense that they're both different issues which you need to deal with slightly separately in terms of people coming here. But I think that there is a real sense within Labour. They've obviously tried to rebrand illegal migration as irregular migration to try and take the sort of but
nobody's buying that, are they?
No, well, I mean, no. I mean,
you
it's
can
just
call it anything you like. You can call it banana boat if you want, but it doesn't really matter what you call it. The fact is, these are people coming here who shouldn't be here.
No, of course, yeah, right. And I think that we're going to see more of a push for that in the next coming weeks or so. But as you say, I mean, currently the legal migration is just one aspect of it. And I remember talking to one Labour advisor who said that, you know, often in focus groups, voters fail to distinguish between illegal and legal, the sense of the borders being out of control. And obviously, while legal is important, you know, clearly I think that we're still doing checks on a lot of these people who are coming here, unlike those who are crossing illegally.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the other problem is that, you know, until it was raised as a problem, people had no idea quite how bad and how significant the legal migration was. It was only really when we started examining Rishi Sunak's record and the Tories started talking about how they might want to stop dependents coming with students who were coming on student visas that we didn't really know anything about that. I mean, I remember whenever it was, 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, when those statistics started coming out that people were arriving in this country with work visas and possible student visas with up to 5 other people with them. And people were going, sorry, how does that even compute? You know, we've all been to work in foreign countries, or at least I have, and you don't turn up, you know, at the border of the United States of America with 7 other people. You go, I've come here to work, you know, I've got a visa, and they go, fine, in you come.
And of course, it's not just sort of Rishi Sunak, but it's Boris Johnson whose government created this visa scheme. And I think that the closest thing you can have to a defence for what happened was obviously migration numbers collapsed during the pandemic. I think less than sort of, you know, net 40,000 or something like that, because so few people were coming into the country because of COVID. But as a result of that, we saw this escalation. Now it's been revised upwards to 906,000 for the year in 2023. That is extraordinary.
It's a massive number.
Yeah, massively. And I think that, you know, people, even the government now will concede that they want to get it down closer to about sort of a third, 40% of that. I still think for many people that would be too many.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, a bit more breaking news. The rate of UK unemployment increased to 4.5% in the 3 months to March from 4.4%. So whoever's coming into the country, they're clearly not being employed. That's have to be said. What do you make, by the way, of the criticism of Starmer from the left, from people like John McDonnell, who was, of course, Jeremy Corbyn's kind of right-hand man? He came out yesterday and likened the speech that he made, particularly the reference to an island of strangers, to something that Enoch Powell said.
Yeah, I found that rather baffling. I mean, I have read and studied the Enoch Powell speech in 1968 as one of the most famous of the post-war era. Yeah. And it's not a line that jumps out in the same way that the obvious one is rivers of blood or sort of the whip hand, etc.
I mean, he says that, I think the quote in the Mail says that he said British population had found themselves made strangers in their own country.
I think strangers in their own country, I feel that that's much more sort of mainstream sort of... It didn't jump out to me, I have to say, when I heard it. I mean, it sounded almost like no man is an island or something almost like, It didn't jump out to me, but I mean, I think from a number 10 comms perspective, they'll be quite happy having John McDonnell, who very much left Jeremy Corbyn, etc., to his shadow chancellor. They'll be pretty happy with his criticisms, and I don't think there's particularly radical in that specific passage you highlighted.
No, but then Reform, of course, picked up on what we did yesterday morning, which was to find a clip of Keir Starmer from 2020, in which he, goes on and on at great length about how we must, promote the benefits of immigration, completely and utterly in total, opposition to what he said yesterday.
Yeah, and I think Keir Starmer has always been able to reinvent himself politically, and that is his great attraction for some in politics, and that is his great disadvantage for many people, because I think that he was obviously running for Labour leader in 2020. He was talking about how wonderful migration was and how he obviously signed this letter in 2020 decrying the deportation of foreign criminals, and then he obviously had to reinvent himself to become Prime Minister, and now he's taking a much tougher line because he can see the existential threat from reform. But I think going with political weather obviously may well potentially be Labour's downfall if they don't feel like...
I think so. Because, I mean, I take your point that it may be something that people are attracted to him by. I don't think many people are now attracted to Keir Starmer for any reason, because I think they've seen him as a bit of a duplicitous character, somebody who sort of blows with the wind, doesn't really believe in anything. I mean, he makes the point as well of the way he does it. Yesterday he said, I believe in this, as if he had to overemphasise the fact that he clearly doesn't believe in it, because he didn't believe in it yesterday, believes in it today.
Well, I think there's sort of a bit of course correction there, isn't it? Sort of, please, he's called it a core Labour value, controlling migration, which
where's that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think all his party definitely agree. I mean, it then goes back to this sort of nebulous idea of fairness rather than legality, which I thought was maybe sort of interesting for a sort of human rights lawyer to make that case.
Yeah.
But I think that, you're going to see more of this kind of rhetoric over the coming weeks and months, but I'm not sure all his party buy it, certainly.
No, indeed. And what about this bizarre incident in his home in Kentish Town, where somebody, it would seem, I'm only saying this because it sounds like it, rather than there's only evidence yet, but somebody chucks a petrol bomb or something at his front door. Thankfully, it didn't do any massive damage, but it's obviously damaged the outside of the door and the porch. I mean, people were sort of, I think, initially being whimsical about it, saying, there's 47 million possible, suspects in this case because everybody hates him so much. But it is quite worrying that a Prime Minister, and it happened with Rishi Sunak, didn't it, with the Greenpeace protest, that a home that he can still be living in, even though he's not living in it currently, could be so easily targeted.
Yes, and I think because he wasn't living there, obviously, number 10, that's why there wasn't sort of police protection there to deter something like that. But I have to say that looking at the photographs of the incident, it's quite shocking. It's really sort of visible damage. When these things come in, you're never really sure, is it a sort of, just a sort of drunken idiot or something? But it was quite disturbing. So I'm sure we'll get more.
Yeah, I'm just actually getting told that we got some breaking news that a 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of arson, I think it is. So I guess we'll find out more about who that was likely to be. But certainly there were demonstrations. I remember at the time when the demonstrations happened from pro-Palestinian groups. I think Just Stop Oil did one as well outside his home, and there was a lot of conversation at that time that you shouldn't, homes, private homes, residences where particularly there are children, should be really out of bounds from political demos.
Yeah, I certainly think that. I think there was one about sort of suggesting Keir Starmer was personally responsible or could stop the killing. And I think his wife spoke about that and how unpleasant that was.
Yes.
I mean, clearly, there's always, I think, a line there. And I think similar things have been seen at David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary's house, as well, in North London.
Right. I mean, interestingly enough, from what we understand, the property is still owned by Starmer, and he owns another property as well, but they're renting them out. This from Lorraine that I've just got from on Twitter. Mike, it doesn't appear that Starmer has registered his rental property on the MP's register of financial interests. That's an interesting point as well, isn't it?
Well, it depends if it's in his name, but I'm pretty sure... Well, we can go away and check after this if he's mixed with all those sort of declarations, but I'm pretty sure that given he's the Prime Minister and obviously people know his address, I think it would be very, very sensible and stupid if he hadn't registered it properly.
Yeah, that's true. Just to reiterate, a 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life after two properties linked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer were damaged in London. And, of course, interestingly enough, you've got a juxtaposition of the background of Lucy Connolly here, who was put into prison for 31 months for threatening to set fire to something or urging somebody else to do it. And this is actually somebody doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wait to see what sort of the details are, etc. But I think also what contributed to Lucy Connolly's sentencing was the climate and events of Southport and all that was going on there in terms of incitement, etc.
Yeah.
We don't know enough right now about sort of what was going through this 21-year-old's head, if indeed she did anything to do with it. So we'll have to wait and see.
No, quite. I mean, a couple of other things that have kind of emerged just before we let you go. One in the page 2 of the Sun. There looks as though there's a possible scenario where Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall is going to do a review into exactly how they're going to deal with disability benefit and how they're going to deal with the assessing of personal independence payments, PIPs, as they are known, which would appear to be Labour perhaps again weakening and sort of, not holding the line on some of the things they said they wanted to do because they're now so unpopular.
Look, I think that there's going to be a really difficult few weeks in terms of parliamentary management. We've already seen sort of 80 MPs signing letters about how it's going to really affect their constituents. And I think that the government is now perceiving this as a test of their own authority and credibility. Can they get through these welfare cuts, I think around 5 billion or so? And will they have to come back for more? That's the key thing in the autumn. I think there's there's talk of a sort of two-step process here whereby they'll come back, they'll vote before the spring, before the summer, and they'll have to have one after the summer as well.
Yeah, indeed. Good to talk to you, James Hill. Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Political Editor at The Spectator. Let's get a voice note from Graham.
Morning, Mike. It's Graham in Manchester. Great show as always. I'm firmly on the hate side of the political debate. I hate the fact that illegal migrants are turning up undeterred and rinsing the country of money when we're broke. I hate the fact that previous governments failed in the migration issue. I hate the fact that the current government has only just come up with a so-called plan after a year in office, and even in that statement managed to blame previous governments about 20 times. And the plan has no target, no delivery time frame, and no how.
Exactly right. And literally, when we listened to Keir Starmer yesterday live on this very show at 8:30 yesterday morning, it was very clear that it was once again a collection of platitudes, a collection of wanting to do something as opposed to actually doing something, a collection of statements literally that were kind of all about this is what we will do, this is what we will try to do, we will cut immigration by 100,000, but if it somehow doesn't work, we'll try something else. There was no mention of illegal boats, no mention of illegal migrants whatsoever. There was only talk of stopping the number of visas being granted to people who wanted to come and work in this country. And as it was pointed out by Peter Blexley when he was here, literally a white paper which is going to go through Parliament could take a minimum of a year to 18 months before any result could even be seen. So basically, it's as you were. There's not much changing. Meanwhile, even as the speech was being made, seven separate boats arrived in Dover, border force boats full of migrants. Could be as many as 600 or 700. Incredible. Steve says, Peter is spot on. Starmer's Labour Party was elected purely on a protest vote. When he tells us they are carrying out the changes people voted for, it is all cobblers. Alan in Middlesbrough says, morning, Mike, it's lovely weather, so Starmer should have used the opportunity to put one of his strap lines into practice and released the sausages and had a barbecue with Vicky. Yes. Well, I mean, I imagine he doesn't know what to do with himself at this point, Keir Starmer. He's probably trying to wonder about whether he should have a summer holiday. Probably trying to figure out whether it would be wise for him to go anywhere. Because at the moment, everything he touches turns to absolute crap, I'm afraid. 21 minutes past 7.
I think the whole conversation has changed. You know, some of us have got scars on our backs from fighting for this stuff for years and years, years in which it was not just unfashionable, but completely taboo to be aggressively questioning and challenging the scale of uncontrolled immigration. You know, those of us that have been at the forefront of this political debate have been called every name under the sun, and that's fine. We're used to it. You stick your neck out, you've got to be ready.
For years, we've been told that just to mention immigration makes you a racist.
Yeah.
Now, the nation has pronounced, and has pronounced big time. And if there had been elections in areas which were banned from having elections a couple of weeks
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side, this is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. Mike, loving the show already. Peter Blexley, as usual, was hitting many nails on the head, but he looks like he's going to explode. Could someone possibly grab him a Bailey's coffee for medicinal purposes? And on the adult kids moving in, better make Blexley's coffee a double Bailey's. Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the story that we've been doing something with this morning on page 3 of the Daily Mail, that a quarter of young people now who have moved away from their parents' homes have moved back in, largely because they probably can't afford to live outside. And part of the reason for that, of course, is that property has gone through the roof, and not only property to buy, but also property to rent. Because what we know, for example, is that the government, through Serco and various other organisations and various other government contractors, are now snapping up all sorts of property, rental property around Britain, so that they can put migrants in them and pay over the odds for them. We'll be talking to Robert Jenrick coming up later on in the show. Nigel Farage will be joining us as well. Right now, let's talk to Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Robert, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. Let's have a look at what Starmer actually said yesterday about the island of strangers.
These rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
Well, he does believe in it now, he says, but he didn't believe in it before, Robert, did he?
No, and I don't think he believes in it now, and I don't think the British public believe that he thinks it now either. This is, of course, a man who has made his career championing open borders. In 1988, he said that immigration rules were inherently racist. He, as you've pointed out, repeatedly campaigned for freedom of movement and the case for migration to the UK. So this is a man who has made a complete about turn on the principles and positions he's held for the last 50 years of his life. And you can kind of see that in the measures that he set out in the white paper. Although he's talked tough, the actual measures don't do anywhere near enough to address the very real concerns that about 70% of the British public have, which is that immigration has been far too high. All they really do will bring it down to where it was pre-Brexit. And of course, that was a huge level at that point, enough to make people vote to leave the European Union to try and take back some control. So I think his words have been kind of actually identifying, I think, a lot of what people have been feeling over the last few years and the change that they've seen in their communities. But unfortunately, the measures won't do anywhere near enough to actually address the situation.
No, I mean, clearly there are many problems in this country. Most of them come from illegal migrants and people coming here to kind of join other migrants, it seems to me. You know, the ridiculousness of allowing people to bring dependents with them when they were coming here to study, or bringing dependents with them when they were coming here to work, has ended up, you know, meaning that we've got a sort of five-fold increase in immigration rather than a one-fold increase in it. And that's really part of the problem. The system is broken.
And that, in large part, is on the shoulders of the last Conservative government, who really expanded those dependent routes, especially for those coming to low-skilled, low-wage jobs. And there are statistics doing the rounds that about 20% of those that came 2019 to 2024 were actually on work visas. So it was a very small number of our immigration system. Of course, some measures have been implemented in the last couple of years that have looked to bring down that number of dependents, but a backdoor still remains on family reunions. That's something that the white paper doesn't actually address, and it's kind of kicked into the long grass. We'll have to wait a little bit longer to see whether they close that loophole. So there's a very real risk that actually the numbers that we see are kind of the thin end of the wedge, and you know, over the next few years we'll see that those entrails of family reunion routes continue to spread out.
Yeah, and that is part of the problem. I mean, I think it's a massive part of the problem that nobody's really talking about, because an awful lot of the people that come here on the small boats now are allowed into the country and allowed to claim asylum because they say they've got family members already living here. And when you talk to like immigration lawyers and you know, sort of left-wing human rights lawyers, they say, and that absolutely entitles them to stay in the country. Well, I mean, it's a never-ending story then, isn't it? And all you're going to get is, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of people coming here claiming that they're, you know, related to people who are already living here.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's thanks to Article 8 of the human rights, of course, the European Convention on Human Rights.
Yeah.
But it also works the other way as well. It also works an individual is able to break into the country, make an illegitimate claim to asylum because of the way our Home Office works. It will likely be granted. And then once they've been given that refugee status, they can start then bringing over individuals and family members as well via those legal routes. So it's a two-way street, and unfortunately it is a huge backdoor that maybe you don't see when you see the boats coming over, or you don't think about it, and it's kind of hidden below the surface, but it's very real, and it is driving that huge increase in numbers that we're all feeling.
And just in terms of what Starmer actually did say yesterday, have you got any confidence that it will reduce the numbers, albeit a small number? I mean, Yvette Cooper said 50,000 on Sunday when she was asked about it, and that had become 100,000 yesterday under Keir Starmer. I mean, is that likely?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable there will be a small impact, but whether it's enough is not even up for debate. It won't be anywhere near enough. We'll still have net migration around about 300,000. The numbers that it will bring down are frankly going to be cancelled out by those small boat crossings anyway. And then, of course, we'll see next week whether he signs us up to the EU Youth Mobility Scheme as well, which would further increase numbers as well. So it's tinkering when we need actual dramatic action.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you, Perry. Robert, thank you very much indeed. Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control. One from Chris in Newbury. Why is everybody falling for Starmer now turning right-wing? Next week, he will announce free movement for under-30s across Europe. We will see tens of thousands of now documented former illegal migrants heading for the UK in weeks for low-skilled jobs. Yesterday was a distraction tactic. You may well be right. Mike from Dorset says the Channel migration could be stopped in a few days by telling the French that they have 1 week to curtail the boat crossings. Otherwise, the UK funding will stop and all the fishing concessions in British waters will be withdrawn, rigorously enforced by the Royal Navy Fishery Protection. Great programme. You and your colleagues at Talk are the true voices of the masses, says Mike from Dorset. Well, thank you very much. We like to say that there's nobody doing what we do, and I think that's true. You know, whatever outlet you choose to look at apart from this one, you will never find these kinds of conversations going on and these kinds of truths being told, because people are frightened. They don't want to say things in case, you know, they get felt to be the wrong kind of person. You know, Keir Starmer's actually changed his tack on all of this, because there was a time when the people of northwest London, where he lives, would have been absolutely horrified, and some of them still are, at what he's actually said. You know, the trouble is with Starmer, as much as what he said might be right, you don't believe a word of what he says he's going to do about it. Let's get a voice note from Perry.
Morning, Mike. I know he blatantly lied to the WASPy women, saying they get everything they deserve. I know he lied to the pensioners. I know he lied to the farmers. I know he lied to us about saving £300 on our energy bills. I know he blatantly lied to us, saying that we could rip up our community tax if it goes up a penny more. But I tell you what, Mike, I do believe him now. I really sincerely think he's telling the truth. I think I might even rip up my Reform membership card. He's won me over. I'm completely convinced. What a lovely man.
Kerry, you jest, of course. Nobody in their right mind thinks that Keir Starmer is in any way truthful, is in any way sincere, and is in any way not a hypocrite. It's incredible that he thinks that because he said what he said, that some people who might have voted for reform a week and a half ago will now go, oh, do you know what? Labour are really, really tough on immigration now, so I think I'll just vote for them. Because they're going to stop all the boats, they're going to make sure that nobody comes here who shouldn't be here, they're going to make sure that no visas are issued to people who might be bogus. Certainly nobody's going to be able to come here and study when they don't really want to, and just go into the black market instead of working an economy job which keeps somebody else out of a job. No, we'll just vote for Starmer. He'll sort it. Keith in Lincolnshire says, Mike, great show. Starmer says, Smarmer even, says we should train our own people and get into work and not rely on foreign labour. Then does a deal with India to allow thousands of Indian workers to come here and not have to pay national insurance. And their employers will not have to pay national insurance either. What a hypocrite. Yep, I'm afraid so. We see you. We see through it. Nobody in their right mind doesn't. Surely to heaven. 7:33.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:35. If Starmer had heard yesterday's speech last year, he would have accused the Speaker of being far right, says Bill. He keeps giving everyone the ammunition to not believe anything that comes out of his mouth. Mike says, another Mike, his speech was nothing but word salad. We should rename him Kamala Starmer. Keep up the good work. And Tim in Southampton says the definition for multiculturalism has now been redefined as an island of strangers. Yeah, I mean, it's all very strange, isn't it? And I don't think anybody really believes this road to Damascus conversion that Starmer apparently says that he's taken because he now believes, and he now believes it because he said that he believes it, that immigration must be curtailed in this country, in his words, significantly. Emma in Kent says, Starmer's speech yesterday makes me so mad every time I hear it. In that patronising tone of his, he's preaching to the converted. Yeah, does he really think people are that daft? Let's talk to Baroness Ros Altman, crossbench peer, former pensions minister as well, because there's a benefits backlash going on. One of the things that we're reading about this morning in The Sun is that it may well be that Liz Kendall is going to completely revamp the way that they reassess PIP payments, and nobody's really quite sure how it's all going to go, because clearly the skids are under this Labour government and they're trying to recapture whatever popularity they might have had back in July of last year. Baroness Ros, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. They're obviously in full kind of backpedalling mode at the moment, the government, so I guess if you were lobbying to have these disability benefits looked at in another way, this would be a good time to do it.
Absolutely. I think the government is on the ropes a little bit because it has taken away benefits from people who were never expecting a Labour government to do something like this. Right. Now, it started with the winter fuel payment, and that is the biggie, because on the doorsteps, at the local elections, that was the thing that came up time and time again.
Yeah.
And now, with cutting potentially disability benefits, I think that the government itself is in a bind because its MPs supported it during the winter fuel payment fiasco, I would call it. I think what was done was just so crass and so wrong. And the way it was done was even worse, taking winter fuel payments from the very poorest pensioners, because if you're on pension credit, you're not necessarily the poorest pensioner.
Yeah.
But on disability benefits, I think more Labour MPs are now ready to rebel, whereas there was solid support, even though people were holding their nose and thinking this is awful, but they were still supporting the government. With the next cuts coming now, there seems to be more of a mood to rebel, but the government has a massive majority. It's hard to imagine that they would actually lose a vote in Parliament if it comes to that. But I think, as you say, there may be a bit of backpedaling and a bit of, well, maybe we'll soften things here and there.
Right.
But the government has to save some money somewhere.
They do, but the trouble is every place they say they're going to save money, it gets sort of dwarfed by somewhere else where they say they're going to spend it. You know, because even the winter fuel allowance saving didn't really save them very much. Similarly, neither did the VAT on private schools. Didn't really provide them with an awful lot of money. You know, so similarly, this, I think, because it's been so badly organised and so badly described, it's not that clear how much money even this, you know, curbing of the disability scheme is going to work.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, the calculation that will need to be made. Is it worth the political pain to save a tiny bit of money, or should the government just say, OK, we've listened to our MPs and backbenchers and, of course, particularly voters on the doorstep, and we are going to try and find another way to save some money. And they have to do some cutting somewhere.
Right.
But I think the way that they've been looking at doing it is politically difficult for them to sustain.
Well, that's right. And surely there are other places where they could look. I mean, they've talked about cutting back on civil service, the size of the civil service. They talked about making people redundant. But again, it was slightly smoke and mirrors job, because they were actually talking about, you know, asking for voluntary redundancies from people and kind of basically just not replenishing some jobs that were left vacant, which is not the same as cutting, is it?
Well, it in the end will mean a cut in the numbers, but as you say, Mike, it doesn't save a lot of money in the short run.
No.
These things take time, and it's a kind of very slow cut, whereas what's happened to the finances of the nation is that there's been a massive change in the estimates of what the country can afford. And of course, we've also had, which I still think is a mistake, a very much higher interest rate environment than we should have or would have expected. And the Bank of England, in my view, needs to get on and cut rates much faster than it has, because real interest rates, you know, interest rates above inflation, have been kept very high just in case inflation goes up, while growth itself and fiscal policy have meant that we are actually going to head for a much weaker economy. So, you know, government borrowing costs have spiraled. And to...
That's because they keep borrowing more money.
They keep borrowing more money, but the cost of borrowing has been going up as well.
Yes, no, I know, because they're borrowing money to pay off some of the interest on the other money that they've borrowed.
Exactly.
It's bonkers.
Exactly. And unless we get more growth, and of course the tax policies that we've seen in terms of employer national insurance are the opposite of growth producing, then we are still going to have a massive fiscal hole that needs filling. Pension funds could help in terms of filling some of the growth gap, in my view, and we could perhaps help people see that investing more pension money in the UK itself, as all other countries do, we have a very low exposure to the UK, could help to boost Britain and also boost our pensions and long term make it a better country for us all to retire into. The government has to find money somewhere. And there are big sums in certain areas, but the benefit cuts are not big sums, they're small sums.
Have you seen this morning that Lloyds Bank has apparently snubbed that plea from Rachel Reeves to push money into the UK? Scottish widows apparently have said that they're not going to sign up to the pact, which would see Britain's largest retirement funds invest 50 billion in infrastructure, property and private equity by the end of the decade. So, I mean, the trouble is, the sense you get from Rachel Reeves and the general kind of, stewarding of the economy is that they don't really know what they're doing. So, I mean, I wouldn't invest in anything that had any Rachel Reeves mark on it. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, I believe in Britain. I actually think our markets are quite bombed out. And I don't think we have to have just unlisted or private equity. That gives a huge amount of money to the city rather than directly to industry.
Yeah.
We could be buying more of our quoted stock.
Yeah, but I mean, again, if things are worth doing, I'll do them. For example, if my pension advisor says put some money into this because it's a good idea, because you'll make money, then I'll do it. But I'm not going to do it just because it's supposed to be good for Britain, because I've already given Britain plenty of money, thanks very much indeed, and they've just squandered it, So, same with electric cars, if you make me an electric car that's cheaper than the petrol car that I've got, and it's as good as it, and it works as well, and it's cheaper, I'll buy it. But, not if it's more expensive.
No, well...
Basic economics, right?
British companies are a lot cheaper than other companies abroad. The trouble is, we need confidence in growth. And that's what's missing.
Yeah, but the trouble is everything here is more expensive than it is everywhere else. I mean, I hear tales of woe from everyone. People who go away on holiday. You go to Spain, you can buy a bottle of wine for £1. You can buy a packet of cigarettes for £4. You can go out for dinner for sort of, 25 euros. Here, you're spending hundreds of pounds doing the same thing.
Well, I think inflation everywhere has been an issue. And yes, you can go places where you pay a lot more. There are also places which, you can go to in Spain and other countries, which you pay a fortune as well.
I'm talking just generally, just an ordinary family of four, living in Britain right now are paying a lot more for everything, including petrol, including, clothing, including food, than you are in places like Spain and France. You are.
That is another problem. The cost of energy here is a huge issue.
Yeah.
We have got such a mismatch between the costs of our industry and producing here and that which exists in other countries, because we have made our energy so much more expensive. We've dropped the subsidies, but of course, if we want to have energy security here, we've got to make sure that we have domestic energy supplies as well, because if we're relying on Russia and we're relying on...
But we've got domestic energy supplies, but they've all been closed off thanks to Ed Miliband.
I think they'll need to revisit that too. I really do.
I hope so. I'm glad to see how optimistic you are, Baroness Ross. It's very refreshing to see. So well done to you. Thank you very much indeed. Baroness Ross Altman, crossbench peer, former pensions minister, saying she believes in Britain. We should back Britain more. I agree. But why is everything so bleeding expensive in this country? That's what I want to know. Sean says this. Morning, Mike. Sean from Sheffield. Regarding our young kids moving back home, it really boils my blood that our kids are being forced out of their homes, yet all the migrants get everything paid for and given money for doing nothing. Great show. I love Peter Blexley. Keep up the great work. And Alan in Middlesbrough says, tell Peter we have the same problem with our 27-year-old son. We've nicknamed him the Snaffler as he lives in the fridge. We now have to hide biscuits and other luxuries, otherwise they'll be snaffled by the Snaffler. This is the subject of a quarter of kids who have moved out of the family home, moving back now for all manner of reasons, but largely because it's so expensive to live out there if you're not getting paid an awful lot of money in, say, a start-up job in your 20s. Let's get a voice note from Gary.
Morning, Mike. It's Gary from Canterbury here. What I don't understand with this immigration stuff is that we've got Manston Airport, which is actually quite close to places like Dover, Ramsgate and all of that. Why can't they actually pick up the people who have actually crossed the channel, take them straight out to Manston Airport, put them on a plane, and then take them straight back out again? I mean, seriously, this is getting a bit of a joke. I mean, why can't we put them back on a plane before the actual human rights lawyers actually get their hands on them? No one touches them, off the boat, on the plane, off they go.
Yeah, it's a perfectly good idea, a perfectly good system that you could work, absolutely no problem at all. I don't know why they don't do these things. I don't know why they seem reluctant to do anything other than just welcome these bozos into our land, put them on a coach, drive them to a hotel, give them a shower and a shave and some food and some money. and the ability to wander about willy-nilly whenever they want to. Just doesn't make any sense, does it? 7:47.
We know that over the past 3 years he's been on countless foreign jet-setting luxury trips around the world at our expense. He says it's to, foster relations with foreign countries and to tell them how wrong Russia was to invade Ukraine. I'm not sure what that has got to do with the speaker, but there you are. He spent about £300,000 over the last 3 years going on these luxury trips.
When he talks about integration, we've been saying that for years. When he talks about learning the language and working, I mean, these are all sensible things. The issue is that there's no target, there's no number at all. We're very clear on the number. The number should be net zero. And just last week we had, I think, the Office for National Statistics saying that the average annual net immigration was going to be over 500,000. And he hasn't resiled from that in any way. And I think the lack
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:49. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here, of course. Robert Jenrick's going to join us, former Immigration Minister, now more or less de facto sort of deputy leader of the opposition, you'd have to say, to Kemi Badenoch. He's got lots to say about Keir Starmer, as has Ram. Here's a voice note on Starmer.
It's quite worrying that people actually bought into all his lies. I mean, look at his record so far. In 2019, he went on record as saying that Jeremy Corbyn would be a brilliant Prime Minister. He backtracked on that. He hated Donald Trump. Now he's his best mate. He was all for open borders. Now he wants to close them. During his election campaign, he was a toolmaker's son, but his son actually ran his father actually ran the tool-making company. He promised to clean up politics, take out all cronyism, but he's getting Lord Ali to buy him and his wife all sorts of stuff. The guy is full of, and I'll leave you lot to complete the words. Thank you.
Ram, very well put, and well done for coming back with all of that history on Keir Starmer, who clearly is a man that's not to be trusted because of the way that he changes his mind, and with the so significantly ridiculous way that he makes out that he now believes in something that he never used to believe in. I mean, look at what he did with what a woman was. Couldn't tell you what a woman was for years, and now suddenly he's had some clarity and he realises what it is. We'll be watching very shortly Donald Trump arriving in Saudi Arabia, by the way. He's getting a free plane from the Qataris. Whether or not he's going to take delivery of it, we don't know yet. But basically, he is, in fact, now about to land in the Middle East, where he's going to be having a series of talks with the Qataris, with the Saudis as well. Not with the Israelis, as far as we understand it, but we'll keep an eye on that. US President Donald Trump has just landed in Saudi Arabia. Let's talk to Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director for the Henry Jackson Society. Alan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to speak to you. I mean, just on the face of that, before we talk about the ISIS problem and the 400 jihadis that may or may not be living in Britain, Trump going to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, it's quite a significant move, isn't it, for him? His first sort of proper foreign trip as a statesman abroad.
Yes, I mean, I think what we'll see is a lot of his priorities coming to fruition on this trip, particularly working closely with the Saudis and the Gulf nations. He's obviously seen Saudi Arabia as a key strategic partner for the US from a resource basis as well as from a diplomatic basis, and we'll see what that means in practice, how it'll unfold and what will be announced.
Yeah.
We've been promised big announcements. Let's see what they are.
Yeah, I mean, it shows the world is kind of changing, though, doesn't it? Because it's not something perhaps that would have happened. I mean, I know Biden went to Saudi Arabia, but I don't think he even got to see the top man, Mohammed bin Salman. I think he was kept waiting, and he ended up seeing somebody else. Trump is obviously a friend of the Saudis.
Well, you'll remember the world's most awkward fist bump.
Yes.
Biden wouldn't shake his hand, so it was a ridiculous set of affairs. But look, Trump is friendly with the Saudi royal family. He was obviously very close to them in his first term. That's continuing, and the question is, what have they got up their sleeves in terms of big announcements? Are they about to announce a partnership of some kind that's going to revolutionise the future of the Middle East? I mean, that's all the talk is about. Let's see if it actually unfolds.
Yes, we shall see. Let's talk about the jihadis, because a piece in the Sun this morning saying that there's possibly 400 UK jihadis who carried out killings, terror attacks and genocide over in Iraq and Syria over a period of years. Some of them may still be in refugee camps over there. Some of them may have returned to the UK. It's slightly worrying that we don't seem to know for sure exactly where they are.
Well, isn't that just the problem with, all of this story? We have no idea who's coming in and out of this country, whether they are British citizens or, foreign migrants, illegal, legal. It's all just a complete mess. And this story highlights that. The fact that we can have these very dangerous criminals potentially roaming our streets, having been allowed back in without even anyone inspecting their past, is just extraordinary. So we have a problem here, a very serious problem.
We really do. And if they are back here, of course, the other problem we have is that, one, they haven't been brought to trial. Two, they haven't seemingly been investigated very much, or at least we don't know that they have been. And three, they're basically walking around.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, all those three matter. The government has stated repeatedly it's interested in justice for the victims of ISIS, but how can it be interested in justice for the victims of ISIS if it allows ISIS killers to roam around the UK? That's the big problem. And who knows what these people intend for us here? That's the other part of the equation.
Right, exactly. And because of the kind of controversy around Shamima Begum, she tends to get more of the headlines than anybody else. But of course, there are other people who did precisely what she did, sometimes perhaps even worse things than she did, who have been allowed back into the country already.
Indeed, and that's the problem, isn't it? We had a very good legal precedent set where Shamima Begum was indeed not allowed back in because of her membership of ISIS and her support essentially for ISIS. Now we've got people who potentially, as you've said, could have actually committed serious crimes for ISIS, and they've been able to apparently walk back in. I think there needs to be an urgent investigation to discover who these people might be, where they're living, and what on earth is going to be done to them to prevent them from being able to walk freely amongst us going forwards.
Yeah, exactly. And as for those who might still be in the refugee camps, I mean, what's their sort of legal status, as it were? Are they British citizens? Are they welcome to come back? What's the story?
Well, that, again, depends very much on an individual basis as to who they might be. My position is very simple on this. We have the precedent set that's been backed by the Supreme Court, essentially, that says that if you do have access to another citizenship and the UK then has the right to remove your citizenship on the grounds that you committed treason against this country, and then you should stay in Syria or go back to that other country in perpetuity. We shouldn't have these people here.
No, quite. So you'd be in favour of just saying if you've gone there and you are now currently living there in some kind of camp, you shouldn't be allowed back?
Yeah, if you've got access to another citizenship, which is a legal framework for which that can be done, absolutely. Then goodbye, you made your choice, we don't want you back. There's no absolute call for you to be here, and make your own luck amongst the people that you tried to kill.
Yeah, and just on the immigration front, I mean, pictures this morning in the papers of these three young men arriving yesterday, even as Keir Starmer was speaking about strengthening our immigration policy. He didn't really say anything about strengthening the border. He didn't really talk about illegal migrants at all. But these guys on a coach, one guy making the sort of victory sign as in a W for winner. They don't look as if they're fleeing war to me. They look as if they're coming here for a very good time.
Well, here's the problem, isn't it? We're speaking about migration as being a massive problem in British politics today in terms of the UK's future cohesion and in terms of the economy in that way. And yet we are getting those arrivals occurring even as the Prime Minister's making his speech. The system's broken. We all know that asylum is being gained by people who are not true asylum seekers. They're people who, want a better life. I get they want a better life, but that's not our job to provide them with a better life, basically.
No.
We're a refuge, but we are not a place that is going to say to you, come, all you huddled masses who want a better life, because Britain's your soft-touch place who's going to pay for you to have that better life. That's just not the system, and we need to, end that system now.
Yeah. And do you believe Starmer yesterday when he says that he wants to reduce immigration significantly? Those are his words.
Well, I would believe him if he put a number on it.
Yeah.
Why didn't he put a number on it? It's all very well saying, I want to reduce immigration significantly, but if you're not going to give yourself a target, everyone knows that if you don't have anything to aim for, you're not going to succeed. You might make a dent in it. Okay, he'll make a dent in it, but we need to get the numbers down by massive amounts, Mike, to make this a viable solution for this country. And if you don't set a target, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Alan Mendoza, good to talk to you, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you very much indeed. One here from Michael in Birchington in Kent. Great idea to fly the illegals straight out. The trouble is that Manston is currently closed and has been for 11 years, currently due to open in 2028. It would be useful because the Immigrant Processing Centre is also at Manston. Well, very true. Let's get a voice note from Kieran.
If you're listening, Keith, why do you talk to us like we are 4-year-olds or 3-year-olds even? Why do you think it's necessary to talk to the nation? Your voice is horrific, 100% the most annoying voice in the galaxy, but the way you deliver that voice, it trumps the voice itself. It's so dull. You'd put a dead person back to sleep. But the real crime, the real problem that the nation's got with Keith is his haircut. And whoever his stylist is, and it might be Wahid Ali, I don't know if he's still on the fashion front, that guy. But why is he styling his hair like that? Looks like a palm tree that's been in a storm, a 15 years monsoon stroke typhoon. That's his haircut. Anyway, listen, rant over. Kieran in a tree. Good luck, mate.
Kieran, thanks very much indeed. We've got more to do and so much time to do it in. See you after the news.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to the very nearly 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. A couple of pieces of breaking news this morning. A 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life after two properties linked to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer were damaged in London. Also, the rate of UK unemployment increased to 4.5% in the 3 months to March from 4.4%. So, of course, if the immigrants are flooding into the country, they're obviously not being employed. Also, UK average regular earnings growth decreased to 5.6% in the 3 months to March. So fewer of us are working, and many of us are working for less money. That's how great things are in this country. Keir Starmer, meanwhile, all over the front pages, largely because of that house fires mystery on the front page of the Times and, of course, the Telegraph. We've also got his migration plan that was unveiled on this very show yesterday, around about 8:30 yesterday morning. The migration plan of his to curb 100,000 arrivals a year. Nobody's quite sure if that's actually going to be the case. He said measures would end a squalid chapter during which net migration hit a record of 906,000 in 2023. It has since fallen back to 728,000. No mention, of course, from Keir Starmer yesterday of the illegal migrants. While he was speaking, 7 separate boats arrived from Border Force, bringing in something like 600 to 700 refugees, illegal migrants to this country, who have now been taken off in various coaches, different dispersals around the country into different hotels. And that, I'm afraid, is the current state of affairs. Other stories that we're going to be talking about, of course, are Donald Trump arriving in Saudi Arabia today. He's going to be talking to the Crown Prince there. He's going to be talking about exactly what deals can be made between America and those countries in the Middle East. He's also possibly the recipient of a brand new £450 million plane, which is going to be given by the Qataris. As we're watching now, Donald Trump is about to disembark from Air Force One. Labour's the Mail's front page, rather. Labour's taking us all for fools. Starmer ridiculed over plan with no cap on numbers, recycled policies, and it goes against everything he's ever believed in. And when he stands there saying, I believe in this, we need to reduce immigration significantly, can you really believe a word he says? Unbelievable stuff. It's not really believable, is it? 0344 499 1000. Ryan Sabey, Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, is here. The Sun's front page this morning has got a picture of P. Diddy, Diddy Coombs, Sean Diddy Coombs to be precise. Monster is what it says. Rapper is violent and a sex trafficker. Defence say kinky group sex is not a crime. It's an extraordinary case going on in the United States of America. Apparently forces ex-singer Cassie Ventura into sex with male escorts and also stamped on her head. His lawyer in his defence says he's kinky, but all his relationships were consensual. Is he a monster or is he a swinger? Certainly a fascinating case, certainly a bit unsavoury for this time of the morning. But it's 5 minutes past 8. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Other news on Donald Trump, of course, this morning is that he's planning to talk to President Xi this week as he seeks to re-establish what he calls a very, very good relationship with China in a sharp reversal of the tariff war. So once again, as I've said to people, you've got to wait and see what happens with Donald Trump. His negotiating team have now achieved what they're calling a total reset with China, both sides agreeing to suspend the majority of tit-for-tat tariffs for about 90 days, so that will all kind of settle down in time. Let's talk to Ryan Sabey, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. As we do, you can see the Trump plane there, if you're watching right now on talkTV. You can see the Trump plane. Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, will be walking down those steps very shortly to be greeted by the diplomatic mission of the Saudis, and will be eventually having talks with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. But let's talk to Ryan Sabey first. Ryan, very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, it's very fascinating what's going on with Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia. We'll come back to that perhaps when he steps off that plane, because we're not quite sure what's going to come out of this meeting, but we can be pretty sure that it'll be hyped up to a pretty large extent. Let's talk about Keir Starmer. A 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life. A lot of questions being asked about how it's possible that the property albeit that it's not now being occupied by Keir Starmer, but it's rented out, we believe, could be attacked in this way. We saw something similar, didn't we, with Rishi Sunak when his house was taken over by Greenpeace protesters. Should the protection not be a bit better than this?
You would have thought so, and I think one of the questions that it raises, even if the principal character, whether it's Rishi Sunak, whether it's a Keir Starmer, aren't actually living there at the time, or they're in Downing Street, who is protecting their secondary property? There's no way that Sir Keir Starmer or any Prime Minister can live in the house that they've always lived in, or that they've lived in for many years. They have to move out. They have to have the security within the confines of Downing Street. But you just wonder, we may not be asking for a police officer to be stationed outside that particular house 24 hours a day, but you do wonder whether there should be regular patrols, there should be CCTV, there should be systems set up so the police know exactly what's going on in those streets. But it does surprise me that someone can get so close to do what they did yesterday. And we hear this morning that a 21-year-old man has been arrested. But it takes you back to those scenes when Rishi Sunak wasn't in his house up in his Richmond constituency, and you know, those people on the roof. It kind of beggars belief.
It sort of does, but I mean, I suppose in saying that, we're not really asking necessarily for a round-the-clock, police guard on the property, because maybe the people that live there wouldn't want that anyway. But you would think that they might be, I don't know what the answer is, but you'd think they might be a bit better at sort of, working out that there's somebody who might wish to do something like this.
Yeah, no, the police will look at all of this very, very carefully. They'll be looking at the threat level at the particular time. So the fact that Sir Keir Starmer or other high-profile people aren't there, the threat level on those principles is obviously it's not there. But you just wonder whether there's a halfway house that can be arranged where those sort of properties are monitored and there's panic alarms or buttons that can be pressed to actually get the police out there or the fire brigade out there as soon as possible. But it does seem strange that people can get so close and actually do that. Look at those pictures of Sir Keir Starmer's front door. They're pretty horrific, actually.
Well, they are.
Maybe a small fire or a firework being set off. It looked like the whole of that front door was charred.
Yeah. Well, people have described, and we don't know for sure because nobody's actually said this, but people have described hearing breaking glass before the fire sort of started, which would suggest possibly somebody chucked maybe a Molotov cocktail at it.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to wait and find out on that. That's entirely plausible. I think one of the problems, for Sir Keir when he was in opposition, he was outside that house most, once a week during the pandemic, clapping for the carers, those NHS workers that we all did. And people knew where he lived. They saw his front door. It was very completely obvious roughly where he lived. It's very. People know that he lives in North London. It doesn't take too much detective work to work out, where he lives. And that vivid front door, and people can work it out very, very quickly.
Yes, indeed. Let's talk a bit about his speech yesterday. Obviously, we covered it here at the time, 8:30 yesterday, almost 24 hours ago. But an awful lot of disbelief, quite frankly, from all corners of the political spectrum, really, on what he had to say. Him saying, I believe this, I believe it now, that immigration needs to be curtailed in this country significantly, is his words. He's getting criticised from the left for sort of invoking the language of what they describe as the far right, invoking the language of Enoch Powell. The Guardian's having a go this morning. Meanwhile, nobody really believes that he wants to do this because he's never wanted to do it before. And in fact, quite the reverse. You can find plenty of pieces of footage of Keir Starmer saying the complete reverse, that we must welcome immigrants, that we must, promote the benefits of immigration because immigrants are what make Britain great. And he's now saying the exact opposite.
Yeah, I think one of the problems for all politicians is authenticity. I think if you have to be authentic, and the voters have to try and buy into what you're selling. So if you have a politician one day saying I believe in free movement, the next day or a few years later saying that we need to crack down on this, and the rhetoric is really, really strong, a lot of the voters are left with their hands in the air, wondering what to believe. But the rhetoric was strong yesterday, talking about we are living in this island of strangers, and it's time to end this squalid chapter in our history. So Sakir has set out his stall. Let's judge him on the results. And him saying that he's going to reduce net migration by 100,000 people a year is a bold statement when it's been going up so much. Now, I think one of the problems is that those figures will continue to go up. They may just not go up as much as what they have done over recent years. So he's in a bit of a quandary, but he's got to show that results are happening and happening quickly.
Yes. I mean, just looking at that double-page spread in The Sun, pages 6 and 7, where you show 7 boats arriving just in one day, many of them arriving while the Prime Minister was actually speaking. First one at 7:32 in the morning, last one at 2:51 in the afternoon, 500 plus, maybe as many as 600 plus coming in yesterday. And a very striking picture there as well of the 3 arrivals, 3 young men, impossible to say where they're from, but one of them putting up this sort of W for winner sign, and they will no doubt now have been whisked away to a hotel somewhere where they'll be living a reasonably nice lifestyle. And Nigel Farage with a piece in the paper saying he saw a group of fighting-age men clad in Palestinian face coverings posting a video on TikTok as they attempted to enter Britain illegally by boat. And of course, you know, your story describes how they were taken from the boats, basically put into to coaches and shuffled off to various hotels around the country.
Yeah, and I think that this is the trouble for Sakir. What he's trying to crack down on legal migration on one hand, and on the other hand, exactly the moment he's making that speech and throughout the day, he's got the big issue of illegal migration. The trouble is the two just marry up in some way, and people just look at what's happening with those small boat crossings and those hundreds and hundreds who are coming over every single day. And we've had 12,000 so far this year. We're now at the beginning of that summer period where maybe the water, the channel will get a bit calmer, and those numbers will just increase. So people will just may say that he's trying to crack down on the legal stuff, but on the other hand, you know, it's he who wanted to say that he did say that he wanted to smash the gangs, but we'll be getting increased numbers over the summer.
Yeah, exactly right. We're just watching pictures there, by the way, Ryan, to your right, of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, meeting Donald Trump, greeting him as he walks off the Air Force One plane into Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, a very significant trip for Donald Trump. We won't know, as I say, what's going to be discussed yet, but it's a pretty clear signal that Donald Trump believes that the future of his, shall we say, policies and his economics, as it were, is in Saudi Arabia and in the Middle East and not Europe. Yeah, no, big sort of major summits and meetings in the Middle East for Donald Trump. Now, he has, engaged with other political leaders, obviously, around the world. So Keir Starmer has been to the White House. So we are on the radar, but it's interesting that direction of travel is towards Saudi Arabia, the Middle East. And one other thing to bear in mind, I think Donald Trump was saying yesterday that he wouldn't actually mind dropping in on the talks between Zelensky and Putin if they happen on Thursday. So this is the guy who is just getting in the absolute middle of all these world disputes to try and solve them. Obviously, yesterday, the China trade deal with the US, that seemed, or the negotiations seemed to be getting on very well. So this is a guy who's just getting absolutely stuck in. And when he's getting to the Middle East, actually, he's trying to strike up some big deals. And don't forget, he's going to have that US Air Force One plane donated by Saudi Arabia. Right. It's going to be his absolute showpiece plane that he's going to be flying around on. Yes, the Americans are not happy about it. Some are saying, this is absolute corruption, like a banana republic. I think it's the Qataris actually are giving him the plane. And basically, he's saying, well, it's for free. What's all the problem about? It's very Trumpian, isn't it? Where he's going, I can take a free plane. It's free. What's the problem? I'm not going to do anything in return for it. Yeah, I think the fact that he said that he's going to give it to the presidential library doesn't hold much water with a lot of those critics who we've been hearing from Congress. They talk of a mass conflict of interest that he was getting this plane for free. I mean, on the scale that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, on the scale of Keir Starmer getting a free pair of glasses from Lord Ali, some would question that. And you can imagine him taking it with him, can't you? When he leaves after 4 years in the White House, he'll just get on the plane, fly down to Florida, and never see it again. Yeah, exactly. It'd be interesting to see that. But Donald Trump is. Let's see the devil in the detail on any sort of trade deals between US. But Donald Trump is seeing that as a vast resource of wealth and inward investment.
Yeah, for sure. Just one final one, a little interesting story internecine kind of war going on in the Labour Party. Ed Miliband's wife apparently is objecting to a new block of houses being built near her house, where she shares with, not a million miles away from Keir Starmer's house, by the way, in northwest London. Angela Rayner, of course, pushing for more houses to be built, but it's the usual NIMBY lot in northwest London in the guise of Mrs Miliband, who's a High Court judge, apparently. So she doesn't want it.
Yeah, it's not very happy. It's one thing they're proposing, builders and planners, is a 5-storey sort of tower block. Now, I suppose it's fine when it's not happening near you, but if you're a High Court judge and you're not particularly happy with people maybe looking into your garden, or it's a bit of an eyesore and it may drive down property prices, you're probably going to be the first person in line to actually complain about it. And I think there's a few Hollywood actors or a few stars in there as well.
Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch is in there as well, apparently.
Yeah, he's also put a complaint in. So let's see where that one goes. But with the government trying to build 300,000 homes every single year, this one may get the green light.
Yeah, you've got to love the old NIMBY champagne socialists, haven't you? Absolutely. You can't be relied upon for anything, really. Good to talk to you. Ryan Sabey, thank you very much indeed, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. Great show, as usual. See Captain Wet Wipe is at it again, talking about bringing in cheap foreign labour. Didn't he sign a deal last week with India? Agreeing to do exactly that. Yeah. Honestly, the man has got more sides than a Rubik's Cube. Have a great day, Mike. Always a pleasure.
He has indeed. More faces than Big Ben as well. Absolutely extraordinary how much he can come up with, which is blatant nonsense compared to something he'd said literally the day before. Extraordinary stuff. Donald Trump in Saudi Arabia, we'll keep you updated with all of that as well, of course, and we'll keep taking your calls. I was almost going to call in and defend Keith on personal attacks about his appearance, says Anna in Surrey, but then I remembered the people in prison for Facebook posts, the pensioners and the disabled, all punished by Keith in his quest to champion immigrants, and I then thought, no, insult away at your leisure. Thank you very much. Mike says this, why does Keith Starmer attempt to sound like Winston Churchill delivering a rallying cry to troops before they go over the top? Reducing immigration by 100,000 is around 600,000 too few. Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? And it won't make any difference because you'll have more people coming in illegally anyway who will probably counterbalance that number. Stuart from Bradford says it's about time the people of Britain started using the ECHR to our advantage, i.e. Article 5, the right to liberty and security, and for those who have been affected by the internet police, Articles 10 on the freedom of expression. Well, yeah. I mean, why not? If you can't beat them, join them, as they say. This is Talk.
we know that over the past 3 years he's been on countless foreign jet-setting luxury trips around the world at our expense. He says it's to, foster relations with foreign countries and to tell them how wrong Russia was to invade Ukraine. I'm not sure what that has got to do with the Speaker, but there you are. He spent about £300,000 over the last 3 years going on these luxury trips.
When he talks about integration, we've been saying that for years. When he talks about learning the language and working, I mean, these are all sensible things. The issue is that there's no target, there's no number at all. We're very clear on the number. The number should be net zero. And just last week we had, I think, the Office for National Statistics saying that the average annual net immigration was going to be over 500,000. And he hasn't resiled from that in any way. And I think that
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense, 23 minutes past 8. Morning, Mike. I can't even let my dog on the beach at this time of year without being fined, says Becky from Devon. But illegal migrants, they can land on the beaches, enter the UK illegally and be treated to a holiday in a hotel. I recently stayed in a hotel in Swindon with a pool, etc. It was quite obvious the reason why it was on the cheaper side was because I was sharing the hotel with guests of the council. So sometimes it's not fully closing hotels, it's having them holiday alongside paying guests. And that must be really galling if you've actually paid to be in a hotel, only to find that the whole second floor or the third floor or the fourth floor or all three of them are actually occupied by illegal migrants. Incredible. Paul from Cornwall says, when are the French going to actually do anything? The smugglers seem to have a free pass to get hold of dinghies and engines. They must have to get spares and parts, etc., least of all the fuel. With the drone technology, why is it so difficult to spot the boats setting up? The whole thing is disgraceful. I think you're absolutely right. Let's talk to Alt Mehmet, chairman of Migration Watch, because, of course, he's got a big piece in The Sun today. After Keir Starmer's speech yesterday, we all had something to say about it. On page 10 this morning in The Sun, it says the Prime Minister must move harder and faster to halt this influx. And they have a big piece about how the White Paper basically is not enough. And lots of numbers. 150,000 plus migrants crossed the Channel to the UK since 2019. 108,131 people who claimed asylum in 2024. That's up from 84,000 in 2023. 12,000 approximately people have crossed the Channel by small boat already this year. The list goes on and on and on. There are a number of very, very good numbers in that piece. Alp, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. I mean, we spoke about this yesterday, and you've written a piece of The Sun today along the lines of how bad the situation is, because clearly, you know, Keir Starmer's woken up and smelled the flowers, and now suddenly seems to believe in stopping migration significantly, in his words. I'm not sure we really buy that, but what do you make of it?
The more I look at it, the more I think this was rushed. It hadn't been thought through. There's lots of jam tomorrow in the White Paper, and no clear indication when it's all going to be implemented anyway. I just believe that the government doesn't mean it. They're reacting to political developments as much as actually intending to reduce migration.
Right. And it doesn't appear, really, does it, that he's changed his mind? I mean, let's have a look at what Kemi Badenoch tweeted out yesterday as a montage of what Starmer's previously said on immigration.
We need to make the wider case on immigration. We welcome migrants.
Should immigration be reduced?
Well, I don't believe in numbers and I don't believe in salary gaps.
We've always welcomed people to work in this country. We could get a more positive route which didn't take us into the place of, numbers or quotas or, you're only worth having it. You can earn a certain amount of money.
What about foreign nationals living in the UK? Should they get a vote?
I would like us to look at that.
The Labour Party's been a bit scared of making the positive case for immigration for quite a number of years. I think we need to turn that round. The whole United Kingdom is better because of immigration.
So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration. significantly.
Can you trust this man? Very good question. Certainly his previous would not suggest that he wants to stop immigration at all. In fact, quite the opposite.
Well, one thing a couple of things that I picked up in those clips. Numbers clearly do matter when he says they don't.
Yeah.
Giving people the vote, migrants from Commonwealth countries do have the vote. And that, I think, is something that we should be talking about, not giving more of them the vote.
Yeah.
And as for being better off for immigration, well, clearly even the OBR now is saying that we're not, that there are costs, and it's very much a case of making us poorer rather than richer.
Yes. Well, it couldn't possibly be a good thing, could it, to have net migration over the course of the last several years running very high and close to almost 1 million people. And when you talk about the net migration figure, quite often the sort of overarching migration figure is more than 1 million people. Sometimes in some years it was 1.2 million, but you saw that other people were actually leaving, so the net migration figure seems lower. But you can't add practically 1 million people to a country every single year and expect it to have no negative impact, can you?
No, and the thing that everyone's been talking about is our becoming a country of strangers, which has echoes of a speech that was made in 1968 by a certain Enoch Powell.
Yes.
The fact is, it's true. We are becoming a country where essentially there are more and more people, ethnic minorities, who form a bigger and bigger proportion of the population. And with net migration continuing at the present rates, within the next 25 to 30 years, in fact, there are going to be more ethnic minorities in the country than there are native British.
Yes.
And that's something that really does concern people, and that is what Keir Starmer was alluding to yesterday when he referred to being a country full of strangers, or being a country of strangers.
Yeah. But why has he suddenly started noticing it now? Because it's been like that for a few years.
Well, it won't have escaped anyone's notice that Reform did rather well a couple of weeks ago in the election.
Yes.
That's what it's all about. And I'm sure, before I say that, Mike, can I just say this as well? What Keir Starmer said yesterday about strangers, that wasn't an accident.
No.
He knew exactly what he was saying because he wanted us to be talking about it. And my goodness, he's done that. 2 or 3 years down the road, people won't remember what's in the white paper, which is pretty much nothing anyway, but they will remember the fact that Keir Starmer appears to have seen the light and done a U-turn on his views on immigration. It hasn't happened. That isn't true, but that's what's going to be in people's minds, and that's why he said what he did.
But I think also he has to be careful, because this is the kind of thing that people can see, right? It's not like, you know, you're putting up some fiscal policy that may or may not have a reverberation on the markets that nobody really notices, or that you maybe even take, you know, money away from benefit claimants, or money away from pensioners or farmers. This is something people can see on their everyday streets every single day they go out of their house. They can see the immigration and the effect it's having on their community. So if he doesn't change that, then he will once again be accused of being, you know, a paper tiger that just says things and doesn't do anything.
Well, it won't change anything. The paper yesterday really was confirmation that nothing will change.
Yeah.
All the vague stuff in there. When is it going to be implemented? How is it going to be implemented? What are the details? There's lots about how the system isn't working, but very little about how he is going to get the system to work.
Right.
And apart from legal migration, of course, on our screens daily are the pictures from the channel. And that is going to go on and on for so long as we remain in the ECHR. And again, yesterday, he made absolutely crystal clear that there's no question of withdrawing from the ECHR.
Yeah.
So whatever he's trying to do and whatever perceptions he's trying to change, in truth, the sort of paper that was issued yesterday suggests that underneath there's nothing that nothing substantial going to happen. And secondly, the pictures on our screens of 600 young men, as happened yesterday, crossing the channel and coming here, are just going to continue. So people are already thinking, hold on a moment, does he really mean this?
Yeah.
What is he on about? And they know full well that he doesn't mean it and it isn't going to happen.
Yes, that is the tragedy, I think, and I think most people would absolutely agree with you. Alp, very good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Alp Mehmet there, writing a piece in The Sun today, well worth a read on page 10, saying he has to go further, he has to go faster, because otherwise it will be as if he doesn't really care, and he doesn't really want to make it happen. Let's get a voice note from Bridget.
Morning, Mike. Bridget in France here. Just something I spotted yesterday when Yvette Cooper was making her speech on this immigration white paper, wherever that's going to go, God only knows. Nigel Farage got up to answer a question. And the way he was shouted down by the left and the Liberals, it's absolutely shocking. What are they afraid of? They don't want that man to get any airtime in the Commons at all. Absolutely shocking the way he screamed at every time he tries to make a point. And in fairness, he's making the best points there.
He is, Bridget, thank you very much indeed. It is absolutely shameful, isn't it, the way that they all jeer and they try and sort of shut him up. And I think last time we saw a clip from last week's Prime Minister's questions, there was a couple of Lib Dems behind him, sort of, you know, railing at him and, you know, heckling him effectively and making a really unseemly sort of spectacle of themselves just because they don't like Nigel Farage because he's a right-winger. It's nonsense, isn't it? Because presumably they'll now treat Keir Starmer the same way, because he said almost everything that Nigel Farage has said in the past. Morning, Mike. That was a great idea, says Kevin, from the last caller, about using the airports that are close to Dover and Folkestone in Kent. And anyone that arrives in this country illegally without a passport in particular has no right to be here. They should just be put on a plane and sent back to wherever they came from. Great show. Keep up the great work, says Kevin in Lincolnshire. And one here from Sharon, who says, I do think benefits and disability benefits need to be looked at. Why should someone on benefits and disability payments be paid more than someone that is working? That is not fair. It's the working people's taxes that is funding their payments, and there is a lot of people taking the mickey, says Sharon in Staffordshire. Yeah, I think that's right too. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're going to speak to Robert Jenrick coming up a little bit later on the show. Nigel Farage, of course, as well. Next, though, we're going to speak to Naomi Bennett about the possibility of a nurses' strike coming up in a few weeks or possibly a couple of months' time. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:37. I'm Mike Graham. Starmer was against the control of immigration, says Scott in Dorset. No, he's not. He thought women could have a penis and men could have a uterus. No, he doesn't. He has lied and U-turned on every subject and changed his position to align with whatever will keep him in office. If he told me it was raining, I'd have to open the curtains to make sure. Yeah, I think you're right. He's run out of road here, hasn't he? Caroline in Norfolk says, morning, Mike. My mum's just come back from Lake Garda in Italy, and she said it's suddenly gone to being much cheaper than the UK. This is what I was saying earlier. You know, everything in the UK is much more expensive, not least because we pay so much more for our energy. So therefore, everything in the pub costs more, in the restaurant costs more, in the supermarket costs more. I mean, we had this conversation, didn't we, a few weeks ago when the inflation figures came out, and the new inflation figure was supposed to be 2.6%. And I don't know anyone who goes shopping on a regular basis for food alone who would tell me that nothing is going up in price. And in fact, 2.6% is quite a good benchmark because, you know, everything's costing the same amount of money. Well, it isn't, because everything's costing an awful lot more money. And everybody knows that. Cars are more expensive than they used to be. Fuel, actually, funnily enough, is one of the few things that's getting a little bit cheaper lately. But certainly, you know, paying for gas and electricity at home is not any cheaper. And paying for oil, if you use oil to heat your home, that's not any cheaper. And anything that you might have to buy for your children, your school kids, your school uniforms, shoes, all of that, all more expensive. And you can go to any country, mostly in any other part of Europe, and find that it's cheaper to buy stuff. I'm not kidding you. 0344 499 1000 if you've got some things to say about that. If you've been to a country abroad and found out how much cheaper it is. I was talking to somebody the other day who said, you know, you go to somewhere like Portugal, you can get a bottle of wine for a couple of quid. You can buy cigarettes for like 3 or 4 quid. It's not just the vices I'm talking about. The food, you go out for food. You can have a meal for 25 euros for 2 or 3 people. You can't do that here anymore, certainly not in London. Anyway, let's talk to Naomi Bennett, who's a registered nurse practitioner, because we saw a story yesterday in The Guardian in which it said that there may well be some kind of looming nurses' strike, because nurses are now doing what I think the junior doctors did last year, which is basically looking for an inflation-busting pay rise of possibly 15%. They've been offered 2.8. They're not happy with that. So let's see what Naomi can say. Naomi, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
So what's the situation then? You did get a pay rise, did you, I think, last year, of a smallish amount, but you're now asking for more, is that right?
I understand that. I understand the anger that many nurses feel, because our pay has stagnated. Services are collapsing, and we're carrying the burden of the NHS in crisis.
Yeah.
But as a nurse and the founder of Equality for Black Nurses, I don't support the proposed strike, not because I don't believe we deserve more, but because the strike will risk patient safety and further destabilise a system already on its knees. Worse still, many of the unions calling for this action have become complicit. They claim to speak to us nurses, but I've seen how they abandon black nurses during disciplinary cases. They ignore racism and protect the same managers causing harm. What we need isn't just a pay rise, we need a complete reset. And we believe that fairness and equity must be the foundation of recovery. And without that, no percentage uplift will stop nurses leaving. Striking without reform is like putting a plaster on a broken bone.
And so in terms of your basic sort of pay at the moment from the Nurses Union, the Royal College of Nursing, you're quite happy with that then, are you?
Like I said, I believe in fair pay.
Is it fair though? Do you think it's fair now?
Well, obviously with the nurses that I work with, a lot of them are kind of just going along with it, and the problems for them is not so much the pay, it's more the conditions and the treatment and the hostility that they have to deal with day in, day out.
Right.
So, you know, in terms of, what I'm basically saying is people are not just put off by the salary. They're watching a profession where whistleblowers are punished, racism is tolerated, and burnout is the norm. That's the real deterrent.
Right. Have you had this conversation with Wes Streeting?
No, I haven't actually, no.
You should. You should ask for a meeting with him, shouldn't you?
Oh, I'm sure he's very busy. He's probably got so much going on.
Yeah, I know, but what you're talking about is a very existential problem inside of nursing. If people are really, really that unhappy because of the conditions they're having to work in, he needs to know that, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think what I'm basically saying is strikes are not our only weapon. Integrity is. And until our unions and institutions commit to fairness, equity and real reform, this profession will continue to bleed out. Literally one nurse at a time.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a problem. Well, I'm glad you don't want to go on strike, so let's hope that the rest of the Royal College of Nursing has that view as well. Naomi, thanks very much for talking to us. Naomi Bennett, registered nurse practitioner there, saying she doesn't believe in going on strike. But, of course, if they do go on strike, there will be a lot of patients who will be affected. So, we haven't really talked about the NHS this week yet. It's only Tuesday. No doubt we'll get to it at some point. Right now, though, let's take a phone call from Alan, who's in Salford, wants to talk about, I think, immigration. Alan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
What can I do for you, sir?
I've seen I can only watch so much of Mr. Starmer on television, I'm afraid.
Yes.
Every 3 weeks now.
Like the rest of us.
Yeah. But I went through an old clipping from a newspaper from 2003.
Oh, yeah.
When he was an immigration lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
And David Plunkett was trying to get rid of these, these asylum seekers, as well as Blair.
Yeah.
And he won the case for 5 of them, which I think made precedent, and which is why we're in this trouble now.
Yes.
And he won it on the ECHR for food and shelter.
Of course he did.
And, the way he comes on now, I do not believe this fellow one bit. He's lied all the way since he's been...
Yeah.
Oh, and my final point, I've said this about 2 years before the COVID, David Lammy said there was 350,000 illegal immigrants in London and he wants to give them amnesty.
Oh, yeah.
This is, you'll see it in the clippings.
350,000. Wow.
I definitely believe that Starmer will, in the next 2 years, bring in an amnesty for over, I reckon, about 1 million.
He will.
He'll try 700,000, but it'll be an over 1 million amnesty.
Yeah. No, he will, because it'll be the only way that they can actually get rid of the backlog, because they won't be able to send them anywhere.
This is the same backlog as the hospital lark, unless you get in the appointments.
Exactly.
It's all a con.
It's all a racket, isn't it? You're absolutely right, Alan. I don't believe a word he says. I don't believe he's changed his mind. I don't believe he wants to get immigration down at all, because it's not in his DNA. Very good call. Thank you, Alan, there in Salford, who reminds us all that there was a time back in the early part of this century when Starmer was indeed an immigration lawyer, and basically what he did was he used to make his cases all about winning for illegal migrants to be able to stay here. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. Do you know what? The more I think about these illegal immigrants, dinghy boys in the little boats, the more it makes me just totally believe that there's no intention to stop it at all. And the best thing that I can come up with is that it's because it's a multi-billion-pound industry now. And you've got all the hotels making money. And what is the god that all the Treasury and the past couple of governments have worshipped? The god that they worship is GDP, and this adds to GDP. Seems ridiculous because the taxpayer's paying for it, but basically it makes the country's GDP look better, so it makes the government look better.
But it doesn't make the country look better. It doesn't make anything about the country better. That's the other problem as well. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Phil in Coventry says this: never before have so many been let down by so few. Peter Blexley for Prime Minister, he's great, isn't he? We need more people like you standing up for us. And Glenn from Leeds says, morning, Mike. Didn't an old lad get a visit from the old Bill as a complaint of a hate crime had been committed, as he said to someone that came to his stall, speak English or speak up? If any charges of a hate crime were brought, I hope they are now dropped against these men after what Sir Keith has now said. Well, that's a good point too. So if you now thought that you might be in trouble with the police for saying somebody should speak English, Keir Starmer apparently agrees with you. So he changes the laws literally every time he opens his mouth. So that's no longer a crime then, or a hate crime, or a thought crime, whatever sort of crime it used to be, to tell people to speak English, which involved getting a police officer to come, if you remember, to interview and to question somebody who was in a wheelchair actually campaigning for reform during the local elections. That's the world we live in now. 0344 499 1000 coming up. Robert Jenrick's going to be here in the next hour. We'll speak to Nigel Farage as well about what's going on inside the mind of Keir Starmer. Daniel Rubenstein coming up next, though, former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu about the hostage crisis in Gaza.
We know that over the past 3 years he's been on countless foreign jet-setting luxury trips around the world at our expense. He says it's to, foster relations with foreign countries and to tell them how wrong Russia was to invade Ukraine. I'm not sure what that has got to do with the speaker, but there you are. He spent about £300,000 over the last 3 years going on these luxury trips.
When he talks about integration, we've been saying that for years. When he talks about learning the language and working, I mean, these are all sensible things. The issue is that there's no target, there's no number at all. We're very clear on the number. The number should be net zero. And just last week we had, I think, the Office for National Statistics saying that the average annual net immigration was going to be over 500,000. And he hasn't resiled from that in any way. And I think the lack
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:49. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, where Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. We're talking to Robert Jenrick later on in the show, as well as Nigel Farage. Dave in South Gloucestershire says, if Starmer really wants to stop immigration, his action is simple. Step down, call a general election and let Reform UK take power. I believe the boats would stop immediately. Starmer won't do that. He is power drunk. Neither will he do anything to benefit British people or maintain the sovereignty of our beloved country. I mean, that is the problem, isn't it? Basically, we don't believe Keir Starmer. We don't believe a word of it. Not on anything, and certainly not on immigration. A bit more breaking news for you, by the way. Marks and Spencer's has come out and now revealed that customers' personal data has been taken by hackers after it was hit by a damaging cyber attack. This has been going on now for a couple of weeks, you'd have to say. The retail giant's chief executive, Stuart Machin, said the data had been accessed due to the sophisticated nature of the incident, but stressed that this does not include payment or card details or account passwords. So, I'm not sure what they've taken, but they obviously thought it was worth taking. But apparently it doesn't include payment or card details or account passwords. They do say, however, to give customers extra peace of mind, they should be prompted to reset their password the next time they visit or log on to their M&S account. And we have shared information on how to stay safe online. Well, how to stay safe online would be great advice for people that run the M&S data business, wouldn't it? How to stay safe online. Don't get hacked. Don't let people get access to your internal data systems. I mean, this has been really, really bad news for Marks and Spencer's. They've lost millions and millions of pounds over this, and now they're basically saying that all of the data that they hold on you has in some way been compromised. I don't know quite what data. If they're saying it's not card details, I don't know what it is. But it's certainly, if you were a Marks & Spencer's customer, you wouldn't be too happy about it, I wouldn't have thought. 0344 499 1000. Tim in Bradfield, when we were talking about kids living at home, he says, when my kids were living at home, we charged them 10% of their net pay to cover food and laundry. Very sensible. I think you've got to. I think if if your kids have left home and they've come back home again, which apparently 25% of kids are doing currently, you've got to charge them something. Let's talk to Daniel Rubinstein now, former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu. Daniel, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Interesting to see Donald Trump in the Middle East today. He just landed in Saudi Arabia. He's not, I think, visiting Israel on this trip, and he's not attempting, I don't believe, to see Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you hope that he might have something to say, though, about the hostage situation?
I think he will have something to say about the hostage situation. We just saw one hostage come home yesterday, thanks to his diplomacy. Yeah. Trump said before he became president that there would be all hell to pay if Hamas did not return the hostages by the time he took office. Hamas has not returned all of the hostages, and Trump has been in office since January. Both the United States and Israel are giving extra time for a diplomatic solution to the hostage crisis, which has gone on for a year and a half, where Hamas remains the government of Gaza, and Hamas continues to hold 58 hostages, both alive and dead, in Gaza. We want to see them all home and Hamas out of power.
Absolutely. And in terms of what's going on currently in Gaza, it was announced just a few days back that the Israeli policy was going to change, if you like, and they were going to go and occupy Gaza. What's going on with that?
Well, since we just saw a hostage come out yesterday, this military operation has been delayed, and I think it will be delayed until President Trump leaves the region after his conversations with Qatari and Saudi and Emirati leaders. We need to wait and see what the President of the United States can achieve after his meetings with these leaders, because we don't want this extended military operation to be necessary to remove Hamas from power. But if Hamas is not going to budge, if Hamas is going to continue holding hostages, then we should expect to see increased military action in Gaza.
Yeah. And in terms of the operation, if it was to go ahead, what would be the time frame for something like that, would you say?
There is no time frame. The time frame is based on the goals that need to be achieved with the fewest Israeli casualties possible and also the fewest Palestinian casualties possible. The United States and Israel are also in intense conversations now about how to deliver humanitarian aid to Palestinian civilians who were caught between Hamas on the one side and the Israeli military on the other. In the past, Israel sent in so much food and supplies into Gaza that was, of course, intercepted by the Hamas government. Hamas would jack up the prices and use the revenue from the sales of this food and supplies to pay its fighters, to pay the people holding the hostages, and to prolong the war. So we're trying to find ways to shorten this war, and that would include increased military pressure on Hamas and less access to supplies for Hamas.
Yes. You do hear an awful lot, don't you, in certain sections of the media about, aid not getting through or aid being stopped by Israel from getting through, which is often not the case, is it? I mean, tell us a bit about how that particular sort of propaganda tool works.
Well, for many, many months, Israel facilitated the transfer of vast amounts of food and supplies into Gaza, enough to last the people of Gaza for a very long time. Now, this was many months ago, which means the supplies are running low, which puts us in a dilemma. We do not want to see innocent civilians suffer, but we do not want to see Hamas make money and control the economy in Gaza that it can use to prolong the war that keeps us in the exact same situation forever. So Israel decided it's not going to facilitate massive amounts of aid into Gaza that are delivered by these UN agencies that have been compromised by Hamas. We need a different mechanism, and that's what the United States and Israel are working on, to establish zones in Gaza where civilians can come get food and supplies and keep it out of the hands of Hamas as much as possible.
Yeah. Is that even possible to do, though?
Time will tell. It needs to be tried. There needs to be an effort, but we're dealing with a multi-track, multi-front war. It's not just what's going on in Gaza. We want to remove Hamas from power, which is very difficult, and achieve the return of the hostages at the same time. And in addition, we're fighting a 7 or 8 front war against the Iranian regime and its proxies. So there are many calculations taking place at the same time, which is why President Trump's visit to the region is very relevant, because U.S. diplomacy can and will make a difference. We want just not the U.S. to care about what's going on here, but the people of Europe, of the UK, to finally understand that Hamas cannot remain in power.
Yeah, and we saw recently, a few weeks back at least, some demonstrations actually in Gaza against Hamas. and those people were very brave for doing so. Many of them were killed because of that, in fact. Is that still the feeling of many of the people in Gaza? Are there people demonstrating anymore, or has that been kind of silent?
I have not seen recent images of demonstrations in Gaza. I hope that many people in Gaza will decide that this war has been an enormous mistake, and allowing Hamas to remain in power has been an enormous mistake. But as we can see, Hamas is extremely well armed. It remains the government of many parts of Gaza. And if the Israeli military is having trouble after a year and a half of removing the Hamas regime in power, I can only imagine what it's like to be an unarmed Palestinian civilian in Gaza who wants to remove Hamas from power. It's very difficult. Hamas is determined to remain in power and continue its war to fight Israel until Israel is destroyed.
Yeah, I'm sure. Great to speak to you, Daniel. Thank you very much indeed. Daniel Rubenstein, former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu, filling us in on what's going on with those aid convoys and also with Donald Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia, which will hopefully have some benefit to those Israeli hostages who are still being held. Let's get a voice note from Steve on immigration.
Morning, Mike. See old Two-Tier Keir's flip-flopped on the immigration and all that. Now he's been accused of being Enoch Power and all that. So with his new view on it, does that mean that he's going to stop evicting people from family homes and moving migrants in and giving them 5 years rent and everything up front? What do you think?
I very much doubt it, Steve. I suspect so do you. But there we are. Absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? Sean from Bridlington says, Labour's border bill going through the House of Commons at the moment literally contradicts everything Starmer said yesterday. Well, that doesn't come as any great surprise, does it? Mike, why is nothing being done about finding the dinghies and destroying them? Simples, says Jimbo in Glasgow. Well, also a very good question. Good morning, Mike, says Paul in Kent. I would urge MPs to cross the floor in Parliament and sit next to Nigel Farage. Labour MPs must realise their canvassing promises during the election was a lorry load of lies. They must be cringing when listening to Starmer and his absolute and utter BS. Well, I think that's the problem. Jilly from Devon says, Mike, we're in France at the moment, enjoying our annual 2 months each year. Costs in the shops and restaurants and fuel have not risen in the past year. We've realised that as pensioners, we need to spend time in France to actually save costs on living in Blighty. Well, there you are. You see, I say this because I know, because I talk to people, and because also I do travel. And whenever you go to any different part of the country in Europe, any other part of the European continent, things are cheaper. Yes, I mean, you can find expensive restaurants and you can find expensive things to do. But by and large, whenever I go to America, whenever I go anywhere in Europe, I find that everything doesn't cost as much money as it does here. I mean, I don't understand. Why is this such an expensive country? I can't understand why so many people come here as tourists to spend money, because it's so expensive. It is crazy. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call, of course. We've got Robert Jenrick coming up in the next hour, Nigel Farage as well, plus more of your views, all coming up after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you.
course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner.
But don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Gray with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We're in the final hour of the show. Robert Jenrick's coming up, Shadow Justice Secretary, of course. He's on College Green for us. Nigel Farage also coming up. Isabel Oakeshott in this hour as well. Lots of stories this morning on the front pages about Keir Starmer's house being attacked. Of course, not the one he lives in currently, which is in Downing Street, but the one that he used to live in, which he still is an owner of, I believe. A man has been arrested, a 21-year-old has been arrested for an arson attack, apparently with intent to endanger life after two properties linked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer were damaged in London. Also, the other big news this morning, Marks & Spencer's has revealed customers' personal data has been taken by hackers after it was hit by a damaging cyber attack. They say it doesn't include banking details, doesn't include card details, but you should, if you have an account with them, probably change your password. Probably quite a sensible way forward. Also, of course, a lot of stories around about Keir Starmer's immigration speech yesterday. The left of the party, John McDonnell in particular, is likening him to Enoch Powell, saying he's gone over to the far right. Of course, Labour's taking us all for fools, is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. Starmer's immigration crackdown is ridiculous, is what they say, because the plan has no cap on numbers. It's got recycle policies, and it goes against everything he's ever believed in. The Sun says that in the time that he was actually giving his speech, the small boat crossings continue. Up to 7 boats came across yesterday, all from Border Force, of course, delivering migrants onto the shores of this country to be then shipped to various hotels around the country. As many as 600 plus came yesterday on those 7 boats. Absolutely astonishing state of affairs, which I don't believe, and I don't think you believe, Starmer will really and honestly do anything about. Let's have a listen to what you've been saying to us this morning.
Another sunny day, just get your dinghies out, we'll get across the channel, no problem today. That man yesterday, he's got absolutely no integrity whatsoever.
Keir Starmer won't do anything about immigration.
He did not mention illegal migration. What is happening about the boats?
They are trying to double flip the narrative around immigration.
Another blunder from Keir Starmer. He'll go,
I mean, he's claiming they're going to reduce immigration by something like £100,000 per year. We were told by Yvette Cooper on Sunday it was going to be 50,000. I'm not sure any one of you will believe it. There's a picture on the Sun's pages 6 and 7, and also on the front page of the Times this morning, of 3 young men who have obviously come over on those small boats yesterday. One of them's put his hands up, his fingers up in the sign of win, because obviously they've arrived in the country of their choice, and they will probably be here for a very, very long time indeed. Prime Minister says the UK influx is harmful, and he says arrivals are going to be cut by 100,000. I don't think you believe that. I certainly don't believe it. Let's find out what Robert Jenrick thinks. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Very good morning to you, Robert. Thank you very much for joining us. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick in College Green.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Thanks very much for talking to us. Obviously, the top, we'll come to the immigration story in a moment, but the top story this morning, a 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life after that incident, more than one incident, linked to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's homes, damaged in London over the last couple of days. I mean, obviously, the risks involved in being Prime Minister are many. Surely the government should be able to provide better security for the Prime Minister's home, even though he's not living in it, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, I'm pleased the police have taken action and appear to have arrested someone today, but it's not right that anyone in public life feels endangered, their home is in danger, and above all their family, because you can say what you like about us politicians, but our families shouldn't be on the line, and so it's incredibly important that we provide the right protections, because we don't want good people to be put off from going into politics because of this.
No, quite. Well, we'll come back to that perhaps later on. Let's talk about what Keir Starmer said yesterday. He got up around about 8:30 yesterday morning in Downing Street to make his pronouncement, which he said basically has led him to believe that immigration must be reduced significantly, in his words, which is pretty much against everything he's ever said about immigration, isn't it?
Well, it was an elaborate con trick. I watched the press conference in Number 10 and I didn't believe a word that Keir Starmer said, and I don't think most people watching it would have done either. It looked like a hostage situation where he was being forced to say something that his advisors had written but that he didn't believe a single word of. He's spent his entire life, his career, his circle of friends have all been built around a worldview which is of open borders. He's voted in Parliament against every single piece of border control legislation. He said that border control was essentially racist at one point. He wrote letters in which he tried to frustrate the removal of dangerous criminals from this country. He's even stood to be leader of the Labour Party on a platform of restoring freedom of movement with the EU and praising migration. This is a man who does not believe in the nation state. He doesn't believe in borders. He doesn't back British workers. You cannot believe a word that he's saying on this issue, and nothing that he said yesterday is going to make a difference. It's not going to stop the boats. It's not going to bring migration down to the levels that we used to enjoy before Tony Blair took us into this era of mass migration. It's not going to get the 1 million people in our country illegally out of the country, or the 12,000 foreign criminals out of our prisons and back home to where they came from. It's not going to make a difference. It's like going an inch when you need to run a mile.
Do you worry about a politician who changes his mind quite so readily as Keir Starmer? Because he's done it on a few things now, but this perhaps is the most obvious U-turn that he's ever made, which is clearly done because of the reform results from a week and a half or so ago. He now believes that he's going to somehow become more popular if he becomes effectively, in his own mind, more right-wing.
I think Keir Starmer's serially dishonest. We've seen time and again where he said one thing and done another. He lied over and over again at the general election, not least on taxes, only to hike them afterwards. And now he's pretending that he's something that he isn't. And the thing about immigration is that the public have seen politician after politician for 25 years saying that they're going to take action, only to do precisely the opposite, and they are sick of the lies. They want politicians who are actually going to get something done, and there's nothing that Keir Starmer said yesterday that's going to make a big difference to this issue. So he's just going to join that long line of politicians in the dustbin of history who've said one thing and done the opposite when it comes to immigration.
Should he face some kind of sanction, though, or should politicians generally face some kind of sanction for being this dishonest? I mean, you've called him serially dishonest. I mean, that's quite a charge against the Prime Minister of this country. Should he be allowed to do what he's doing and claim that he really believes something when he clearly doesn't?
Well, I think the public are not fools. They see through. I don't believe a single person watched that speech yesterday and believed that that was a heartfelt speech by Keir Starmer. It's one of the reasons why he's now immensely unpopular in the country, because people know that he's lied. His record is already terrible. And on immigration, it speaks for itself. This is the worst ever year for small boat arrivals. The numbers are rising rapidly day after day after day, and he's not doing anything to tackle it. He's done a minor tweak to our human rights laws. He's not tackling the real heart of the issue, which is you've got to be detained upon arrival and removed from this country within hours and days, not weeks or months. And to make that happen, you've got to fundamentally change our human rights laws. We've said as a Conservative Party that means cutting out the Human Rights Act, so you end the merry-go-round of spurious appeals. And we're also looking at whether we should continue to be within the European Convention on Human Rights. You know my view on that. The party's considering its position as well, and I hope it comes to the most robust position as soon as possible.
Do you recognise his phrase, an island of strangers?
I think that there are already parts of our country where that is true. If you look at the centre of Bradford, for example, 50% of people weren't born in this country. If you look at the centre of Luton, more than half of people only arrived in the last 10 years. If you look at Dagenham, you've got the white British population halving over the course of the last 25 years. This has left people feeling very disorientated, that the places that they knew and loved no longer exist. And that has to change, because I want to live in a country which is not marked by extreme diversity, but by a sense of commonality, a sense of national togetherness, where we all believe in one country under one flag.
And also by extreme views and extreme terrorism in some cases. I mean, we've been asking the question since last week about the Iranian terror suspects who have been arrested for a plot to blow up the Israeli embassy, as far as we understand it. And we think that some of those Iranians may have come here on small boats. They may be asylum seekers. The government won't say. Similarly, we're told that there are 400 ISIS jihadis possibly returning to the UK without facing any kind of justice, presumably to wander free in their communities. This is unacceptable, isn't it?
Well, I've said for years now that the small boats crisis is a national security crisis, because you've got tens of thousands of young men coming into this country, almost entirely undocumented. Some of those people mean this country harm, and so we have to treat it with the seriousness that it warrants. And that is why you should be detaining and deporting people as a matter of course. And it's also linked, unfortunately, to a serious rise in crime. I've campaigned to have data in the public domain about the link between immigration and crime. That is now starting to happen. The Home Secretary has finally agreed to it. But I suspect that that will show that there is a serious link between particularly sexual crime and the numbers of people coming in on small boats, because some of these people are coming from countries where the attitudes are frankly alien to those that we have in our own country, particularly towards women, and that is driving crime. And our immigration system should put the interests of the British public first and foremost, in fact every single time, and it should certainly be geared towards protecting people. That's the most basic thing that it should be doing, not allowing people who come into this country to have extremist attitudes, terrorists, or people who might commit crime.
Yeah. And one final question, Robert. You were speaking in the Commons yesterday about Axel Rudikabana and his appalling crime, not just that he committed outside of prison, but the one that he committed inside prison, where he threw boiling water over a prison officer. You say the Justice Secretary must act now before an officer is killed.
I'm afraid there's a full-blown crisis now in our prisons, where in some of our supposedly highest security jails, very dangerous and sick individuals like Axel Rudikabana or Hashim Abedi, one of the terrorists behind the Manchester Arena bombing, are being given access to materials which they've used to attack prison officers. It's frankly beyond belief that men like that should have access to kettles which they can use to boil water and throw in the faces of prison officers. I couldn't care less whether Axel Rudikabana never has a hot drink again in his life, and I'm sure that's what most people in this country think. We should be putting the prison officers, who are brave people doing a tough job in difficult circumstances, first, and that means, if necessary, segregating these people, having them in rooms where they don't meet anyone else, where they don't have hot drinks, where they have no privileges. We cannot allow prison officers to be put in danger, and I'm afraid unless the government get a grip of this issue, yes, it is only a matter of time before a prison officer gets killed.
Robert Jenrick, thank you very much indeed, MP and Shadow Justice Secretary, of course, speaking to us from College Green in Westminster. We've got Nigel Farage with us now, Head of Reform UK, of course. Nigel, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, now we have Keir Starmer, the man who doesn't like immigration. He says he believes that he needs to reduce it significantly. I haven't found anybody that believes him. I'm assuming you don't either.
I love the Times cartoon today. Have you seen it?
I haven't actually, no.
Yeah, but it's Keir Starmer in a tweed jacket, a check shirt, a pair of yellow corduroy trousers. Remind you of anybody? with a pint of bitter and a cigarette.
Well, I mean, people said if you'd actually taken his words and put them into your mouth, people would have no doubt castigated you for being a ghastly right-wing, horrible piece of work that wanted to do nasty things to foreigners.
Oh, if I'd said a country of strangers, I mean, my God, I'd need armed support to walk down the street.
Absolutely right. It's incredible, though, isn't it? I mean, I just asked Robert Jenrick. He didn't really have an answer. How is it possible that we can have a Prime Minister who can so blatantly lie and so blatantly reverse a view that he's had all of his life, which has been borne out by the work that he's done as an immigration lawyer, as a human rights lawyer, as the head of the CPS. He's physically stopped people from being deported from this country, dangerous criminals. How on earth can he pretend that he now believes something completely different?
Well, absolutely. He's a complete fraud in every single way, but because it typifies modern professional career politics.
Yeah.
Don't believe in the blooming thing. It's the pursuit of power for the sake of power rather than what you can do with it. So, look, what he has done, though, is he's made a very big strategic error when it comes to the left of British politics. Yeah. You might have noticed that the Greens are very, very rock solid now at 10, 11%, and that's not going away. You've got the Gaza independents, who might have only won 4 seats last time, but are on course by my calculations to win 20 or 30 seats next time. You've got other sort of independent Corbynista types that might stand. So I think on the left, he's done something for which they simply won't forgive him, because they believe in open borders. And as far as my side of the argument's concerned, well, our Reform voters, who, for example, in County Durham, gave us 63 seats and the Labour Party 4 seats a few days ago. Are they going to say, oh, it's OK then, we can vote Labour? Yeah. I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
Well, of course, particularly since he didn't even mention in his speech yesterday the illegal migrant crossings and the small boats. And you pointed out, as he was about to speak, that there were even 250 young men had already arrived on the shores of this country. It turns out 7 boats arrived yesterday from border force.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, the whole thing's just completely out of control, and I can also tell you that the types of people that are now coming are very much more aggressive, very much more difficult. I think the processing centre at Manston, they're having absolute nightmares with some of these aggressive, violent young men.
Yeah.
No, look, we are in huge trouble, and let's say the immigration numbers go down to 500,000.
Yeah.
But I mean, that still would be just the most extraordinary figure. Bear in mind, from the late 1940s until the late 1990s, that whole span of time, net migration into Britain averaged 30,000 a year. And now we're saying if he gets it down to 500,000, that's a good thing.
I know.
No,
shocking.
I'm afraid he's. But my other observation from yesterday is quite how that Chris Philp character could sit on the front benches attacking Labour's record on immigration after what the Conservatives did. I mean, if I was him, I'd be in hiding.
Yeah. I know.
It is a collective failure, and I think one of the reasons that...
Oh. We've just lost you there.
Okay,
we'll try and get Nigel Farage back. Because one of the questions I want to ask him, actually, is about an MP for Sheffield Central, which is Abtisam Mohammed. You might remember that this is a woman who was refused entry to Israel when she flew out there just a few weeks ago because she was hoping to go on a fact-finding mission. I think we got Nigel back. Sorry, Nigel, just lost you there for a second.
Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
No, I was saying, I think the breach of trust, you think about it, 2010 manifesto, 2015 manifesto, 2017 manifesto, 2019 manifesto. We're going to reduce immigration to net to tens of thousands a year. No one believes a word either major party says on this crucial issue.
No, I think that's right. I mean, Boris Johnson himself, I think in 2019, when he won the Get Brexit Done election, promised to get it down to 20,000. you know, and it then ballooned up to about 1.2 million. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the risk of giving away the store, as it were, and for Keir Starmer to steal your ideas, what would you actually do to stop the boats? If you were Prime Minister today?
We will, you know, Mike, I went out in April and May 2020. I went out into the channel and I started filming.
Yeah, I remember.
And posting, and I said, you might as well put a sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying everyone's welcome. And I predicted there'd be an invasion, a word that got me in terrible trouble at the time. Yeah. And the point I was making is, if you come illegally and don't get deported, people will keep coming.
Yeah.
And the bar to deportation, the thing that stopped the Conservatives' Rwanda plan from working was, of course, if you remember, the intervention at 10 o'clock at night of a judge in Strasbourg in the European Court of Human Rights, the incorporation of that law into the 1998 Human Rights Act. And British judges, I mean, we've even seen someone not deported because his kid liked chicken nuggets.
I know. Incredible.
So unless we get back the sovereignty of our borders, and we can only do that by leaving the ECHR, which might have been a good idea in 1945 Europe, but it's completely outdated 80 years on, full of activist judges. Unless we deal with that, we will never, ever solve this problem.
And he said quite clearly yesterday that he won't be leaving the ECHR, right?
He very clearly said it in response to a question from one of the national newspapers. Yeah. And in fact, it's very interesting, his second speech as Prime Minister in the House of Commons was about the ECHR and his dedication to it.
Yeah. And exactly right, because that's his DNA. He's got it written. You know, if you cut him up, you know, it would run through him like a stick of rock. Let me ask you this question: Abtisam Mohammed, the woman who was refused entry to Israel, MP for Sheffield, right? She's responded to Starmer's speech yesterday by saying Sheffield Central is not an island of strangers. We are a mosaic of neighbours, friends, and families from across the world. We all cooperate and contribute to our community. I presume she was on a day off when there was an Eritrean street fight between two groups of Eritreans, one in favour of the government of Eritrea and one against.
Yeah, and I've been to the Page Hall district in Sheffield. I mean, I'm sorry, but you honestly and truthfully would not think you were in England.
No, and there's a lot of parts of Britain like that.
I'm afraid there are, and you know, there are parts of Britain where English is barely spoken. There are parts of England where women are treated very, very differently from men, where tolerance of people's sexual preferences or choices doesn't exist at all. And you know, we're frightened of using the word, but we are allowing in some of our cities what can only be described as an alien culture.
Yeah, no question. Absolutely no question. Well, presumably you can now say these things because the Prime Minister says it's all right. You should get away with anything you like now.
Well, I don't know. As I say, I think he'll come to regret that bitterly. And I think of course, it was all done because of reform, but I think that to use a line that was so similar to Powell's 1968 Rivers of Blood speech will prove to be a major error.
And that can't have been an accident, surely. It can't have been.
I just don't know. I just don't know. I personally think that it must have been an accident. I cannot think that Morgan McSweeney, who writes all the speeches, of course, I cannot think that he wanted to enrage the left of his own party, given the fractures that are going on. So I think it's a big, big mess.
Yeah. Could it be? Now we're starting to get into the realms of fantasy, but could it be a stitch-up?
Oh, gosh, you better go and write a novel, I think, you know. Sort of, you know, the Mike Graham version of House of Cards or something.
Everybody needs a hobby.
I doubt it because they've got nobody else who, at this stage, who credibly could be the leader of the Labour Party. Yeah. So I just don't buy into that. Okay. I mean, some people say maybe Angela Rayner's the next leader. I don't know.
That'd be amusing.
But well, at least she's real. Yeah. I'll give her credit for that. But I mean, it is a party. It is a front bench devoid of talent. Devoid of world experience. I mean, when I think to myself that of the 25 men and women in the Labour cabinet. Not one of them has ever worked in private business.
No.
You know, I realise they are a bunch of North London human rights lawyers.
Yeah.
And yes, but his speech, you know, when Rishi Sunak said, "I will stop the boats," as one of his key 5 pledges, and it came back to haunt him in the most extraordinary way. I think yesterday's speech will come back to haunt Starmer over the course of the next few years.
Yeah, I think so too. Nigel Farage, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Leader of Reform UK, of course, speaking to us there from London. This is the home of common sense. This is, of course, not only the home of common sense, it's the world headquarters of it, to be honest. 9:26, nobody talks about this stuff the way we do. It's the only place to get it. This is Morning Glory. Coming up, Isabel Oakeshott.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a Member of Parliament, you are gifted loads of things. You are genuinely told that there are certain things that you're able to keep, and you don't have to declare it if it's worth less than £300. I think about £300. So what's interesting is that it does really reveal the absolute lavish nature of a lot of what these members of Parliament get. And I think what we have to be very clear about is any Member of Parliament that claims that they are hard done by, that the £80,000 or £90,000 now that members of Parliament get as a salary, that's not all the benefits that they receive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 29 minutes past 9. Let's go straight to Isabel Oakeshott because we haven't got an awful lot of time. We've only got another half an hour to go. It's been a bit of a busy hour. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Morning. I'm loving this new calling Keir Starmer Keith. I think that's deadly. I think it's as deadly as John Major tucking his shirt into his underpants.
Yeah,
remember that?
Absolutely, yeah. Who can forget it? And remember who wrote about his underpants, of course, that very serious political commentator, Mr. Alistair Campbell, who pretends now to be a very highfalutin and, you know, very high thinking individual, but has forgotten that he used to write a column for the Daily Mirror, which was about as down and dirty as you could get.
Well, it was a phrase that stuck, wasn't it? And I'm quite keen on getting this Keith Starmer thing going, because he is Keith, really, isn't he? No offence to any Keiths that may be listening, but it just seems to suit Starmer to be called
It
Keith.
sort of does, yeah. I mean, my other name for him, of course, is Rodney, which is his other second name, because, of course, it's Rodney U. Plonker from Only Fools and Horses, but that's another story. Just to listen to both Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage there. Nigel saying, you know, they're both very much sort of two ends of the same stick, for want of a better way of putting it. The Tories and the Labour Party, when it comes to immigration, neither one has done anything to solve the problem. And in fact, if anything, they've exacerbated it and made it worse. The Tories were bad enough. Labour are now worse.
Well, I think the Tories bear the vast majority of the responsibility for where we're at, because for 14 years they just basically opened the floodgates. And as Nigel Farage said just now, in manifesto after manifesto, they promised to do one thing and then did precisely the opposite. Now, what they didn't do after David Cameron so demonstrably failed in his ambition, as he called it, to bring net migration down below 100,000, after Cameron failed to do that, the Tories never again imposed any kind of target on it. And what we saw yesterday was Keir Starmer going down the same route. He just would not be drawn on any target. And the reason why is because he knows that he won't be able to any target that he might come up with it wouldn't satisfy the British people. If he said 500,000, well, that's absolutely an astonishing amount. It's probably about what's going to come in every year for the next few years. But if he said 100,000, it's just not going to happen.
No.
Today's headlines are predicting a fall in net migration of around 100,000. Well, that doesn't even touch the sides.
No.
I mean, it's just no use whatsoever, especially not because that refers to legal migration, especially not when you've got tens of thousands of people pouring across the channel. So I think that Nigel Farage was right when he said just now that speech will come back to haunt Starmer, because he just isn't going to achieve it. He won't leave the ECHR. He won't put a target on it. His measures are feeble, to say the least. And this is going to continue being an absolutely simmering source of political frustration and fury among the British people.
There's no question about it, is there? And as you say, 35,000 migrants illegally have already come here since Labour got in. So even if they were able to reduce, say, by 100,000, by the time we get to the middle of summer, that 35 will probably become 50. So already half of that number that they're going to reduce it by have already come by different means. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, it seems to me, because I was saying to somebody earlier on the show, we've now got the ignominious situation where many people who turn up on our shores say they've got a relative that lives here, and then they immediately get a tick for the asylum that they can then get because they know somebody who's already here. And that's just going to get bigger and bigger, and it's just going to kind of increase exponentially, isn't it?
I think that Keith Starmer has no idea the scale of public fury about this.
No.
You would have thought that the local election results would be enough to demonstrate that to him, and clearly yesterday's speech was a response to that. But I just don't think he gets it in his heart. Because this is what matters. Does he viscerally get it in the way that someone like Farage does, because he's been out in the channel time and time again seeing it? Does he get it in the way that ordinary people get it, who live in those areas where people are now being actually evicted from properties so that unscrupulous landlords can make a fast buck from these awful, sweet deals which are being offered, for them to rent out their properties on multi-year tenancies to asylum seekers? Imagine how it feels to be a tenant one of those properties, a British person who is being pushed out in favour of these people coming in who we don't know who they are, we don't know what their agenda is, but we know that they can't contribute to this country anytime soon, demonstrably not, because they are living on the back of the taxpayer. And I think that the anger over this is going to continue to grow, and it is going to clobber Labour because they simply aren't fully committed to do the drastic things that are required.
No, I mean, even leading up to the election back in July of last year, they were still maintaining that immigration was not the #1 concern in the country. They still kept saying it was a cost of living. They didn't want to believe it. And when they got slaughtered in the local elections, Keir Starmer said, oh yeah, we've taken the lesson, I get it, we're listening, and we just have to go further and faster with our programme. No! You have to do a complete reversal of everything that you've done so far. That's what you have to do, because immigration is the key to all of it.
He doesn't get it. That's the truth. We all know he doesn't get it. And one thing that I thought Nigel said in your interview with him just now was really interesting, was a reference to the increasing aggression of the people that are coming over, the cockiness. We saw it in TikTok footage. I mean, for a start, how dare they post TikTok footage of themselves arriving on these shores as if it's some kind of party. These people people are supposedly fleeing war and terror, yet they're coming over here and they are swaggering in now, swaggering. Why are they swaggering? Because they know that they're on their way to a taxpayer-funded lifestyle in a 4-star hotel where they're going to make a pretty penny, many of them, on the black market. And we, the British taxpayer, are forced to suck this up, and people are fed up of it. And the more aggressive and cocky those so-called asylum seekers become as they waltz into our country, the more our communities are going to become divided and resentful. And that is exactly the opposite of what this Labour government purports to stand for. They go on about not sowing division and not creating bad feelings, bad bloods, hatred between different communities. Can't they see that allowing endless people to come in and cock a snook at us all, to mock us and our generosity, is what causes that resentment and those divisions?
I know, it's incredible, isn't it? It's plain for everybody to see. And also, people will see very quickly that all of his, protestations about, making people learn English and making sure that, immigration is reduced, it won't make any difference, because the people who see it for what it is every single day when they walk down the street of their local town or their local city or even their local neighbourhood, which is in the countryside now, they can see it changing before their very eyes. They can see the people moving in. They can see where it's all going on in front of them. And so because he won't be able to change any of that, he will become even more unpopular by the summer.
I mean, Keith was pretty hated within weeks of coming in as Prime Minister, and I just think he's going to be more and more despised. I don't think it's sustainable for him. As I think Nigel was saying in the interview, there's no obvious replacement right now, but mark my words, there's certainly people manoeuvring for that position. And I just think he'll be out probably in 2 years' time, maybe a little bit less than that. But what comes in instead? Is it going to be a Labour leader that decides actually, after all, they're going to leave the ECHR? I can't see it.
No, I can't see it either. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Isabel, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott there, Talks international editor. Andy from Thatcham says, listen to Generic, he talks like they weren't in government for the last 14 years. And Alan says, when do you think the government will decide to insist that anyone wanting citizenship must pass an English language test? Let's hear from Laura on immigration.
Morning, Mike. Laura here from Kent. Another glorious day for your morning glory. I just heard on your news that apparently graduates will be sent home if they haven't found a job within 18 months. What the hell is this government playing at? What it should say is that graduates will be sent home if they haven't found a job with a salary of £30,000 or more within 3 months. Who's paying for them for these 18 months? Yeah. You, me, a very frustrated Laura here. Enjoy
Laura,
your day. Bye.
It's a very good point, Laura. Yeah, these are the people who come here to study, of course, and who, as I've been saying for many years, clearly make a mockery of the system, because they don't just come here to study, they come here to live, and many of them don't ever leave. Many of them, of course, go on and create all sorts of horrible situations, like, for example, the Nottingham killer. He came here on a study visa and went to college for a couple of years and then dropped out because he was a schizophrenic. But don't worry, he was allowed, Callacane his name was, wasn't it? He was allowed to wander around the streets of Nottingham, not being seen by the people that should have been seeing him in the NHS psychiatric services, until he murdered 3 people. And he was a guy who came here legally to this country from Africa. Derek in Salford says, Mike, great show. On Marks and Spencer's, I'm getting so many scam emails proclaiming to offer various services. They want you to click on the contents, then they will no doubt get access to your PC. So an email that I've had for more than 20 years and only used for trusted sites is now compromised thanks to M&S's poor security. Today is the first time that I've heard from M&S via your show, but it was already obvious. Some of the emails say they are from M&S. Unfortunately, some people will probably fall foul to the scam. Yeah, M&S have come out and said basically that customers' personal data has been taken by hackers after it was hit by that damaging cyber attack a couple of weeks ago. They say there's nothing to worry about. They haven't taken your account details or your card details, but you should probably change your password. Righto then. It's 20 to 10.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's her home of common sense right here. I'm Mike Graham with you until 10. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along there. It's 9:42. Let's get a voice note from Wayne.
Good morning, Mr. Graham. Wayne from Burnham-on-Crouch here. So I don't really understand this £8 million a day on hotels, because any disaster in the world, the UN uses tents. Any refugee camp, the Syrian refugee camp, they use tents.
Yeah.
In France, they're in Calais in tents. I don't understand why we're not using tents. I mean, it's perfectly good for those. No one can say it's inhumane or, it's poor standard of living, because when needs must, it must. So £8 million a day. How many tents do you reckon that could afford? It's just mad. Great show, Mike.
Yeah, very true, Wayne. I don't understand who came up with the idea of putting them in hotels in the first place. Whoever did come up with it couldn't have been thinking, I know, this is a great way to do it, because the numbers are going to be so huge later that it's going to cost us millions and millions of pounds a day. That can't have been the logic, surely. Surely they started with the idea that we'll just get one hotel, and now suddenly they've got about 400. Or possibly more. I don't know. Let's talk to LaDonna Harvey, though, at Arizona Morning News over at KTAR in Phoenix, Arizona. LaDonna, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
I've been amused watching Donald Trump swanning it about in Saudi Arabia. It looks very hot there. Obviously it is. He got off his plane, Air Force One, but he's getting a new plane, it would seem. The Qataris want to give him a brand new super plane, which looks lovely, I must admit.
It does look fabulous, and they're more than welcome to give it to him. He's not really allowed to accept a gift that's worth quite that much money personally, so he's going to have to, kind of work it through maybe a presidential library or just give it to the American people. We would appreciate it. Hey, we'll take a nice new plane. But yeah, he's done really well for himself with that 747. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. And I noticed that people in America, there's a couple of politicians in the States going, he can't accept this, it's like corruption, it's like a banana republic. To which he goes, yeah, but it's free. So what's the problem?
You know what? I don't want to turn down a free plane, especially one that looks as good as that. I do love the tasteful cream interior.
Yes.
It's fabulous.
Absolutely. I mean, but you can imagine he's not going to donate it to the common good, is he? He's going to probably disappear in it at the end of the 4-year term and just go, I'm off to Mar-a-Lago. If you want the plane back, you better come and get it.
I would be like, I'm off to Curacao, and if you want the plane back, good luck, because I'm going to land it and then live in it.
Yeah,
so
exactly right.
Enjoy.
Exactly right. But it's quite an important visit he's making to the Middle East, isn't it? Because it's proving, certainly to those of us in Europe anyway, that that's where he thinks the most important part of the world is right now.
Right now, he does. I think that once the trade pause, it's not really a deal. Once the trade pause went in with China, he started looking to the next thing that he needs to handle. And I think that he is after the Middle East. I think that he wants to go in and get this situation in Israel taken care of, if possible, which, good luck. It's been a few thousand years, I think, with that. So, it's interesting to watch him go. And I said from the beginning, it's going to be a lot of ups and downs, but by God, you're not going to be bored with him in office.
You certainly aren't, because, the whole situation regarding Russia and Ukraine has kind of changed numerous times since you and I last spoke.
Right.
First he was being accused of being too close to Putin, then he sold some arms to, or sent some arms to Ukraine. He's now talking about maybe dropping in on a peace talk session, if there is one, possibly in Turkey.
Yeah, and the side switching is really interesting, but he does this. One hand is doing one thing, and the other hand is over here doing a completely different thing, and you're not really sure what the deal is. I don't think he wants to give Ukraine to Russia. I don't think he wants Russia to have it. I think that was the whole impetus behind the trade deal with them, the mineral rights deal with Ukraine, was to try to say, okay, well, we're kind of on this side. kind of. But, you know, he wants to stay in Putin's good graces. So he's balancing this beautifully. It looks like a circus, but I have a feeling that it's really not.
No, I mean, I think overall he's doing a great job of all sorts of things, isn't he? I mean, you know, the tariff problem with China has now been put on the back burner for a while. They've suspended their tariffs with each other while they get a deal done. I mean, some people are going on about the possible kind of late drag that the tariff effect will be, so that, you know, China will suddenly start making more of its own stuff and importing less and blah blah blah. Not really very clear if that's going to happen, but in the short term, I think, you know, as if you were talking about the first 200 days, which we're now into, you know, I think you'd have to say it's been pretty successful.
It's certainly been effective. It's Trump's way of doing things, which drives everybody crazy, especially if you hate him. You know, if you're not a Trump fan, then you hate all of the chaos. If you are a Trump fan, you think he's in there shaking things up. Yeah. You know, some of us just watch from the sidelines and go, ooh, that's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. There's an awful lot going on. You're kind of like, whoa, what's next? Yeah. LaDonna, great to see you. We're a bit short of time this morning, but thank you very much indeed. Arizona Morning News, KTAR in Phoenix. LaDonna Harvey, a great woman who's been following the Donald for quite some time in terms of how he operates and what he does. And as she says, you've got to say, whatever you like, or like the guy or not, he's really getting on with it. And he's over in Saudi Arabia. We'll bring you more on that, of course, as the day goes on. This is Morning Glory.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a member of parliament, you are gifted loads of things. You are genuinely told that there are certain things that you're able to keep, and you don't have to declare it if it's worth less than £300. I think about £300. So what's interesting is that it does really reveal the absolute lavish nature of a lot of what these members of parliament get. And I think what we have to be very clear about is any member of parliament that claims that they are hard done by, that the £80,000 or £90,000 now that members of parliament get as a salary, that's not all the benefits that they receive.
I put it in writing, and they basically replied and said, we can't remove him out of your theatre, but what we can do is we can cancel your surgery, we can move you to a different doctor with a different consultant at an unknown date. And I couldn't believe it. I said, well, you're prolonging my pain now because it needs to be done. It's like an emergency. With endometriosis, it's all over my bowels. It was a big operation. It was a joint case with the colorectal team. A lot of organisation went in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:51, here with you for about another 6 or 7 minutes. Let's get a voice note from Eric.
Morning, Mike. It's Eric from Leeds. It was cheaper for me and my missus to go from Leeds to Tenerife than it was from Leeds to Bridlington to hire a static caravan. And when we were there last week, we got 2 steak meals, 2 pints for me, a glass of wine for missus, and it only cost us €67. This country is absolutely down the swanny.
Yeah.
I'm going to swear then. Sorry, mate. Have a great day. Thank you.
Absolutely right, Eric. Thanks very much indeed. Yeah, Carol Decker sent me one as well, saying, Mike, it now cost me 21 quid for a large glass of very average rosé in a local wine bar near me. I know. It's madness, isn't it, what the prices are of things? Absolutely crazy. Last story of the day, we haven't got a lot of time for it, but Paul Gately's here from Leeds Beckett University, who looks at the role of obesity in exercise. Flabbergasting, it says in The Sun. NHS plan on child obesity. Obese children will get free scales under a new NHS weight loss bid, but they won't be able to see the readings. Sounds a bit mad, Paul, doesn't it? Morning.
Yeah, it does to me, to be honest.
I mean, surely you give them a scale and then let them look at it, don't you?
Well, that would be educational, let's say.
Yeah.
We would also encourage them to be reflective so they understand where they are and where they're going.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit surprised by this as an approach, basically.
Yeah.
But in a sense, this is one of the challenges we face, that the sort of health system needs to change. And in many ways, it's not changing. You know, we've got the vision of the health secretary of community rather than being in a hospital, and yet these children are going into hospital for care that they really could do within the community, and it's much cheaper.
Yes. I mean, the Obesity Health Alliance are saying that this is a compassionate approach, but it doesn't seem like it. I mean, it's more likely to sort of demonise kids, isn't it? I mean, as I say, if you kind of did it in a more rounded way and said, look, why don't you try and keep track of your weight, maybe, you know, weigh yourself every week or something like that and see how you're doing, make it fun, make a chart out of it, you know, that kind of thing. But if you're doing it so that somebody else is kind of spying on you, it's a bit weird.
It is weird. And I think, you know, there's always well-intended plans.
Yeah.
And what we hear from a lot of adults is when people focused on their weight when they were younger, it didn't go to plan.
Right.
And I think part of this is that it's not about the monitoring. It's really about how the information's shared, what support children get, what support families get. Is that communication stigmatising or is it supportive? And in the past, it was very stigmatising. It's your fault, child, or it's your fault, parent. Whereas now, really good quality interventions are much more compassionate, but they bring the children and the families with them. And so for me, this is not a really good measure and a helpful step.
No.
It's not a helpful step.
And what do you think is the cause of so much more obesity in children these days?
Well, the simple reality is, you know, there's a variety of things. We know food's still a problem. We live in an environment where the food's too prominent, too easy to access. 5 years ago, you would never have seen so many Deliveroos, and yet they're everywhere now. Physical activity is a problem. Schools, PE has disappeared from the school curriculum. Children are on devices that limits their sleep. And we know sleep's really critical, and children that sleep less than 8 hours a night are 50% more likely to have a weight problem. And yet no one's talking about this, and yet it's probably one of the biggest drivers. Certainly a sleep scale will be better than a weighing scale.
Yeah. And just even education, presumably, for the parents as well, who must be assuming that... I mean, it's not cheap either. I mean, you talk about, you know, all of the food delivery companies, you know, and there's many of them, but that's not really particularly a cheap way to eat either.
Not at all. And I think for parents, it's not easy. Okay, that's the first thing I'd say. But with some support, we know that we can help parents change their lifestyle. And one of the problems I have, if parents and children don't know their weight, then how are they going to do something about it? How are they going to take responsibility? How are they going to take ownership if it's in the hands of a clinician? That is not a good future model.
No, it really isn't. So, I mean, if you have a child and you're a parent and you think that they're maybe putting on a bit too much weight, what would you advise them to do?
So I'd advise, I look after a charity called Obesity UK. We have about 35,000 members, and that's the support group, so families can go onto our website, get support, access forums and Facebook groups and get some expert advice. That's really a first port of call.
Yeah, OK. Good to talk to you, Paul. Thanks very much indeed. Paul Gately from Leeds Beckett University. I mean, whoever came up with this idea has got to be off the scale mad. pardon the pun. I mean, if you're going to give them a scale, let them watch it and look at it and see what it's doing. Morning, Mike. Your conversation with Isabel made me laugh out loud. My middle name is Keith, and I've always hated it. Since I was a kid, I rarely divulge it to anyone. So there must be something in what Isabel is saying. My double whammy is that my name is Gary, which has become unpopular in recent times for the obvious reason. Thanks for making me laugh. Gary Keith, yeah, it's not a great name, is it? Julia Hartley-Brewer's here. Very good morning.
Very good morning.
Yeah, this will make you laugh. Just seen this from John
Can I
Simpson.
say I haven't got a middle name?
Have you not?
No,
well,
my parents figured the double barrel was enough.
Well, you've got two last names, so that's your middle name, isn't it?
Just saying.
Okay. This is from John Simpson, revered former BBC foreign correspondent.
Yep.
An independent research organisation called Tapestry has found that the BBC is the most trusted international news provider worldwide. That's what I did. It's also by some way the UK's most recognised cultural asset around the world.
I mean, it used to be, but that's why when BBC reporting is so inaccurate and wrong, let's face it, blatantly anti-Semitic and misogynistic because the pro-trans thing, that's why it matters, because it does influence people.
It does. Don't read, in that case, Jeremy Bowen's piece online, the BBC.
I try not
from
to.
Palestine.
I try not to.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Do you want to know something? I know a teenage girl who's Jewish who's been talked out of going to the London School of Economics because the friend who's already there said, who's Jewish, said, you will not feel comfortable here because you're Jewish.
Isn't that shocking?
That's shameful.
Yeah.
That's shameful,
That's
by the way.
awful.
I mean, just that, John McDonnell, who pro-Palestinian, not anti-Israel, just pro-Palestinian, of course, talking about how the Prime Minister's being divisive and talking about migrants as strangers. And it's like, I mean, they are. By the way, they have strangers bar in the House of Commons for people who aren't MPs. They don't seem to have an issue with that.
No.
But, when a young Jewish girl doesn't feel she can go to one of our greatest universities because the racism there, pushed, by the way, by people who have very similar thinking to John McDonnell, maybe you've got something else you should be worrying about.
There's a big problem in London, actually. I mean, I'm like you. I mean, I've got kids who are looking at going to university, and in London, it's a very divisive place in London for universities because they're always demonstrating about something.
Yeah. But, I'm so ashamed that anyone of any religion or any background, sexuality, race, anything would ever have to make that consideration choosing university. And if people don't think that needs to change, then